I've never done one of these.
So I think,
You'll have to walk me
Mr.
through it.
Friends, are we about ready?
Yep.
It looks like setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. And then we're ready.
Sure. Oh, we're going live. I don't know how to
They
do
went live last time, so it was really cool. Last year's I can't change. I'm seeing that.
Oh.
I don't like it.
So, yes, ma'am. Well, so I'll just start by saying thank you, everyone, for coming to our Code of Conduct public hearing. And this is an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions about the Code of Conduct. And maybe, Laura, you can start with just an overview of what we did. First of all, I'll introduce you. This is hard because I've got audiences in front and behind, so please pardon my back. I'm not being rude on purpose, just being rude. Laura is Mrs. Hodera is our assistant principal who joined us as of Valentine's Day this past year and has worked with our committee in doing the update to our code of conduct. This is something that we do annually. And then have a hearing where people can ask questions about the changes. We can see if there's any changes that need to be made before board approval.
Okay.
So that's your introduction.
Great, well, thank you. I believe that the changes that have been made, we presented to the board this last meeting, so I don't think any additional changes have been made since. So when we look at the code of conduct, what we took out was the PINS petition from the matrices. So what we did is we took it out of the matrix and we put it as like a blurb at the bottom that states any of the above violations can result in a referral to an outside agency, including a PINS referral, upon the recommendation of the school administrator. So that it wasn't tied to specific behaviors because they seem kind of sporadic throughout the matrices. So we removed that. We updated obviously the years so that it was current, updated some of the names that have changed since last year with removal of administrators and putting myself and Ms. DeSerbo in. But I believe other than that, everything else has remained intact as is. Are there any questions?
There was one question, and I did not have a copy of the code of conduct right in front of me. I think I have it right here. Oh, or see how it just appears? It's like magic. Was Mrs. DeSerbo in there as assistant principal or as principal?
So that might be a typo. That was one of the questions I actually had. So what we noticed is that Mr. Witcher needed to be removed. So it is listed as principal, but my question was, could there be just a removal without a replacement? Or did you want Ms. DeSerbo in there as assistant principal? We would have to update that change for the correct title.
When I looked at the DASSA coordinators that we're going to be putting in on July 5th at a reorg meeting, we are also naming our assistant principals. So I believe that we should have everyone in there.
Okay.
In meaning that you should be added in as well as the assistant principal at the high school.
Okay. So then we'll note that change to add myself, assistant principal at the high school, and then I'll update this document to say Maureen DeSerbo, assistant principal at the intermediate school. That sounds good.
So I have a question.
Yes.
As far as the pins is concerned, I seen the changes off the matrix, but at the bottom it says any of these above can be a reason to referral for pins.
I think
So some of the offenses I seen were like running in the hallway, or like they seem very like easy things that you can show somebody up for a referral.
we would definitely use the discretion of the administrator in the building. I know I have no intention of putting kids on pins for running in the hallway, but when we look at some of the more serious offenses, where we might be interacting and working with the parents as well, a lot of times the parents are asking us for that assistance with the disciplinary interaction with their child. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility to work with parents to say, okay, it's not in the matrix here, but it might help our child here. So it just allows us to really work that as a one-on-one with the situation per each child. So I don't really think any administrators would be looking to apply pins for some of those less, serious or those first offenses. Those are our teaching moments, our chance to sit with the kids and say, this is what you did, this is how we're going to correct it, this is how we're going to move forward and kind of repair that circle. versus just applying the pins. So that was my understanding of the change.
So to my understanding, I know there's too much discretion as far as the administrative control, as far as what they can refer to or not, like there's no standard, you know what I'm saying? Like you can, so say a student is kind of problematic and then the teacher feels like, okay, I've had it, let's refer them for one little simple thing, like, do you see that kind of discussion? And I feel like that could happen.
Okay.
Is there any way we can change that?
That's a good question.
I mean, I do think that's a good point,
Yeah.
Julio, actually. You know, that's been a complaint, I think, of us and sometimes our policies in our district, that maybe we leave too much up to discretion.
Well,
Can we-
however,
Can we do them, you know, well, however, I
Yeah.
agree, however.
so
but-
if you end up, if it was an unwarranted referral, right? It's not gonna be accepted by anyone on the other end of pins, is really where I'm going with this.
I mean, I'm
And
not
then
sure
we would be
anything is
told
acceptable,
right away.
it's Whether it's really, you know,
They don't, they have to accept it.
Oh,
Do they still
no,
do it?
I know, seriously.
so
That's the other side
rare.
of the story.
So my other question to the other side of the story, is, I see that there are conduct that if you falsely accuse somebody of something, especially like an administrator or a teacher or something like that, you can be disciplined yourself. So if we have like an administrator that refers a student like that for something that's consequential, is there a punishment for that teacher or principal that does that?
I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that. I'd have to really look to see really past precedent or how that would apply, because this is, I mean, that's a student, the code of conduct. I mean, that's a great question. It's one I don't have an answer for. I would really have to go back and look into that.
well, in each of our stages of student discipline, now students are, they have rights. And they have rights to ask questions of what's being brought, what's being said of what they did, right? So they have due process at every stage along the way. And that's where that checks and balances, I guess, is what I'm searching for, is that's where that would happen. Is it's not as if somebody says it, this is it, and that's it. You know, when there's a suspension hearing that's held even before a one-day suspension is enacted. And the student has those due process rights to ask about those charges, to even bring witnesses and to ask questions about it.
And I'm sure that there are parents, some parents out there that probably know all about that. I bet there are other parents and families that don't know all about that. And it's my understanding that that code of conduct is not always done in a fair manner. It's just not. So we're here talking about it.
Right.
I'm just telling you that I can have two students dressed practically the same, and one student will get written up for it, and another student, because of who they are, will walk away and not. I don't care, we can spend all day talking about the code of conduct, and we do every year. We would just like to see it done in a fair, consistent manner.
Absolutely.
And I think and I know, Dr. Geelan, that you know that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, when we leave so much up to the discretion of the administrators, I think sometimes it isn't always done in a fair manner. That's just my opinion.
That's a great example to bring up to the DEI committee, because that's also what we're talking about with equity, right? Equity also is the who you are, and there should be that fair and equal treatment underneath the code of conduct for everybody. Absolutely, that's a good suggestion to bring up.
Just to kind of follow up in my processing of your question, I can speak to my implementation of the code of conduct. When the kids come in and we have those referrals, I print the referrals every day. Before I even call the kids or go visit them on my traveling cart, I take a look at, what happened, their past discipline. I access the code of conduct right there so that we can start to be as fair as possible. So I do know it's a process that is in place with this position now being filled. It's something that we can always work on, absolutely, to make sure that it's more equitable across the board, but it is a process. I call it my good book. It sits right on my table and I'll actually show the kids, this is what you did. This is what I have to do. So that way they know it's not just me being bored saying, yep, you're gonna get 3 nights of detention. So, but that way they can see it in the black and white, and have that coachable moment too. So we can get better at it, for sure.
I want to clarify also that in a suspension letter, it shows what all of your rights in those steps are. It's in every letter. So it's not a matter of who knows and who doesn't know. Every parent is informed. I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. And you may have never received a suspension letter.
And I'm grateful.
So I thought I would educate you about
I haven't
that.
gotten a phone call, but because I have, but I have not gotten a letter, so I wasn't sure what was said in those letters.
Is there like a grace period? So say a student does get a trouble for wearing something that is wrong. Say 6 months later down the road, they get in trouble again for the same thing. Does the first offense go away or does it go? And then you just build up because things happen on accident.
And dress code is something that definitely needs some fine tuning. And I'm looking at this from district to district to district. I mean, dress code is tricky. When we look at implementing dress code, what I've asked the staff to do is to send notification to me. That way staff isn't addressing it in a public setting. And then I call the students down and coach them through the dress code, just kind of show them again in the black and white for the code of conduct. We coach them and show them how to measure, how to, dress per the code, but also have their own style and voice, and do it appropriately. What I then have my secretary do is document it in eSchool just for documentation purposes, so that when the student is pulled again, we can say, okay, well, I've already spoken to you about this. So there's different, different processes through the matrix, or, it might be for something different. Maybe it was shorts one time, maybe it's a shirt this time. So we document it, and we're specific about it so that it's a teaching moment too. Because when you look at what the kids have been going through the last couple of years, they haven't been in a school setting. They're very comfortable dressing the way they want to dress. And we have to reintroduce them to that in an appropriate way. So we do document so that we can keep track. So let's say 6 months down the road, or say we have a situation in the fall, winter has happened, spring has arrived, we're running to that again. Do we take a minute and reteach? Sure, because that's the bigger purpose. Now, if it's an everyday thing and we're having this kid down every day, that's a different situation. But if it's really looking like, okay, we just need a teachable moment, then we're going to take that minute to teach and correct versus being punitive. We want to make sure that the kids are learning why the code of conduct is important as well.
I did. I was waiting for the conversation. So a couple of questions I had looking at the code of conduct. The comments have kind of been brought up. We have a code of conduct that ideally, yes, it's for student conduct. But I also feel that, in full transparency, there has to be some piece of it that also is for our teachers, or I don't know how that works or how that would work. Because I do see sometimes where, well, I'm an adult, I'm a teacher, so it doesn't quite apply to me. I've seen that happen. As far as the PINS petition, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a petition. I mean, there is a legal formality to it, okay? Why are we not utilizing our SRO in that aspect and saying, this is what we're looking at? Because the PINS petition is a wonderful support for families, absolutely, and for schools, but it can be egregiously misused. And it has a very, very heavy weight to it when you put a student on PINS or a child on PINS. And that can mess with their colleges, that can mess with them going forward. And furthermore, if we file that petition, even if, what happens then, let's say that the probation department says, you don't have merit here, right? It's just going to dismiss it, we're done. Is that then removed from the child's record? Or does it still reflect in their school record that a PINS petition was made? Because that also has very weighted things when that child's moving forward. I'm all for teaching and rehabilitating and, you know, helping our students get on the right path. But I have to agree with a couple of our board members. One of the things that our district lacks is clear and concise wording. And when we leave so much open to interpretation, we are falling into a very big pitfall of then trying to define what is equitable, what is, you know, fair across the board. And then I also don't, I want to protect our administrators, right? I don't want anybody coming back and saying it's because of discrimination. I don't want to also give people that power too. You know, I think we have to look at that, and looking at the matrix. I love the theory of the progressive discipline. I love the way that it's set up and it's very with that, the grid. But let's also be honest, some of our students don't quite understand it. You know, it can be confusing to read and follow. I've had to do it a few times myself this year. With my son, he's a handful. You know, and then looking at the way that works, also looking at the disciplinary piece of it. Not only the grace period, but how are we informing parents? You know, I know for me, I'm a helicopter dad. And I love the school tool. I love the parent square. So when my son's gotten in trouble this year, I've gotten a message right home, which is great. I call Maureen and I say, okay, what's happening? He's had to serve detention. Great. Maureen, he can't serve it tonight. Like, I have 4 children. I do have to get other places. I can't just have them stranded. Move it to, can we do it Tuesday, tomorrow night? Because I also think it needs to be very quick in response. You know, so I've been wonderful, and it's been wonderful having that. But I know there have been times where the discipline has occurred, and because of mailing or notification systems, the parent didn't know. Or even with in-school suspension, it has occurred or is occurring, and then the parent got the letter 2 days after the child's already been in ISS for 2 days. We have a breakdown there. So there is a violation of their due process there. And so those are some of my concerns looking at the code of conduct and how we implement it, how functioning is it, and then looking at that PINS component. Leaving it up solely to administration, why are we not utilizing our SROs? You know, maybe who have a little bit more familiarity in that domain.
Yeah, I mean, and we definitely utilize the SROs. Could that be improved upon? Sure. I definitely work hand in hand with Mr. McGraw. I think he's kind of my right hand man. So that's definitely something that happens, but I think there's always room for improvement. And to kind of speak on that communication piece, when something does happen, yeah, we definitely should be calling parents more frequently and quickly to notify before the mailings go out. And like I said, definitely room for growth on that, but that's something that we could definitely implement a better system for.
On page 14, it describes the PINS petitions and when the PINS petition is used and what it's there for. I can't answer your question about the what if, because I've never heard of it ever happening where a PINS petition was made when it wasn't one of these serious incidents where you were trying to help a parent, but the child was what we would have years ago called incorrigible and was not, and they need the extra assistance of the law to help them. Right, so that I can't really answer on what that difference would be, but it does spell out when it's used.
Yes, ma'am. Couple things. First, it was said that there's a suspension, ways that a suspension works with the child. A parent would get notified, there'd be a hearing, all this stuff. Which I can tell you is not true at all. If there is something that is written down that way, it's not implemented. As a matter of fact, I just had a meeting with the superintendent about something just like that. So for this to be said, like, you know, it's written in the book and this is how it works and everything is golden, that's just not true. And kids get suspended without it even being written up. Is that supposed to happen?
That wouldn't be following the process.
Correct.
So I will tell you the process is the teacher refers the behavior through a write-up, or my office can, really any adult in the building can do the write-up.
Mhm.
And then it comes to my office and I compare that with the code of conduct. So we're usually going based on that specific write-up. That's been my experience in the past 5 months.
So what would happen with a child when a principal suspends him and doesn't write it up?
I would need to like a specific event, so I'd be more than happy to look at something specific with you, and iron that out and kind of dig deeper as to see what would happen, because that is really not the process we would like to follow. The only thing that I could think that would be an explanation for that, it was like an immediate larger occurrence, and the write-up just didn't take place because we were handling the event. Should the paperwork have gone through post? Yes, so I wouldn't mind meeting with you on that to hear the specifics, so that way if something did happen that did not follow a process, we can correct that. So I'd be more than happy to do that.
But you wouldn't know how we would correct it, right? Because earlier when the young man asked about what happens when an administrator does something that they know they're not supposed to, what happens? You said that you couldn't tell them.
It's just, honestly, I'm gonna be very honest, it's my lack of experience.
Okay.
And just being here for 4.5 to 5 months, it's a learning process, so I just don't want to answer something that I'm
Yes,
not aware of, so.
Yes, ma'am.
I just don't have an answer for that. Could I find one and we could meet on that another time? Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Because it is our contention that a suspension should never happen if there is no letter or something that's in our student information system. And in those disciplinary things that we have in the disciplinary records are private and are not shared. So when a student moves on, they don't move on with them. The only thing that moves on is their transcript. And discipline is not included on the transcript. So I just wanted to clarify that too.
I would like for you to clarify something too, ma'am.
Yes,
You just said again that students should not get suspended without it being written up.
correct.
But you know that they do.
No, I don't know that they do.
You don't just have to believe. You are the superintendent.
Yes,
I'm time on.
yes,
We had a meeting last week or so,
a few weeks ago, yes.
and I brought that to you. So you do know.
No, I don't know, but we can discuss that. I'm not going to have a discussion about a particular student, In public. but,
For policy, because
but
that's
if
what we're
someone,
doing, right?
what I'm saying is whenever a student is in out of school suspension,
Mhm.
there must be a letter and it must be documented in our student information system.
Right, and I'm saying we know that does not happen.
Okay, you're telling
what
me
do
what
we
I
do about
know.
that?
I don't know that did not
You
happen.
do, because I brought it to you, ma'am.
Okay.
Listen, we don't have to argue about it,
Thank
because
you.
I told you then, right? That just like I know how this system works, I know how these administrators do. So I record everything. So what happened is recorded. So I don't have to argue with you. You don't have to say that I'm not telling the truth. We can watch the video
No, no, no.
anytime that you're ready, and you can see,
Excuse me.
ma'am, you can see that the administrator suspended the child, did not write it up. The next day, we go to the school so we can have the meeting with the administrator,
Mhm.
still not written up. So, and when it's brought to you, did you even talk to the administrator about it? I don't know. We didn't get no feedback here. So all we know is that the administrator gets to run rampant while you guys put all this pressure on our kids.
Let's be clear without using inflammatory language.
I never
You're,
said.
you're
anything.
not the parent of the child,
Mhm,
and whether or not it's in the system and there was a letter in the file
mhm.
wasn't anything that we had discussed right then and there.
Okay.
So I did not go into the system when we met, just to be clear,
Mhm.
and look up any one particular student and discuss that with you. We spoke in general, because I will not speak about a particular student.
Okay, now since that you said that, right?
Yes,
You're correct, 100%. I am not that parent's child. Was I given permission to be here to speak for the parent? Yes, I was.
okay. But we're getting beyond the scope of this hearing.
Well, that's
I'll be
because
very-
you keep changing it, right? Because I'm just asking like, I'm trying to make sure that our kids are safe, which they're not. And when I'm asking a question about what do we do, because this is a public hearing, right? And we're supposed to be coming up with policies and trying to figure this out, correct?
Right.
But when so far, every time somebody has said something, it's, well, we really got it in here, just like the young man that said, You have a thing in there saying that a kid can get put on pins for running down a hall. But then when it was asked, you said, well, the administrator won't really use that one. Then why is it there? That's what we're trying to do,
I
right?
can understand that.
So like, you guys are the smart ones. You guys, should- instead of saying that we don't know, or the administrator won't use it, you should just say, hey, we can take that out of there.
I mean, to me, that it makes sense. Those are things that when we look at the matrix,
Mhm.
the pins where you see it was taken out, it was more towards those second, third fences. So I can see where you're coming from there.
Okay. In your policy number 5, you have, I don't know, I guess what you guys call it, do-rag, but being an institution of higher learning, you would think that would be spelled correct. It also says that you can't use a pin, correct?
I believe it's stuff that out of the notes.
So to me, when I look at that, I see that you guys are targeting my community. No do-rag, no pig. I don't see no comb in there. I don't see no bobby pin or anything else. So when do we look at that? When kids keep getting suspended because they wore a do-rag, does anybody even in here know why somebody in my community wears a do-rag? Probably not.
Yeah, and we talked about that, and I thought you were going to suggest some alternative wording in advance of this meeting.
And I didn't even know about this meeting, man. You didn't tell me that we were having a public hearing on this.
Well, I did mention that we were updating the code of conduct, and to please let us know what your
I'm here letting you
suggested
know.
wording, so that's what we can do right now, is change the wording if we need to, to help me find exactly where that is in here.
On page 7, it will be reference student dress.
Thank you.
Number 5.
Because that's exactly where we're here.
And I apologize. I know sometimes when I speak, I sound aggressive, but I really ain't.
Not include the wearing of head coverings such as hoods, hats, do-rags, hair picks, and similar items, coats or other outerwear or sunglasses in the building except for medical or religious purpose.
It's really aren't head cover.
No, it's really not, and
It's
it's,
more like you said it, Brett.
so would it be sufficient enough to have head coverings such as hoods, hats, and similar items? Coats or other outerwear or sunglasses, that's really what it's all about, it's the head coverings.
Rather than listing the specifics.
Mhm. I think that gets to the disrespectful list and the idea of having total respect. And still having the idea of not having your head covered.
And since your administrator said that even if a person was for wearing something on their head for a religious thing, he would make them get a permission slip. And he said that unless it says in that code of conduct differently, that he has the discernment to make that call. I think that you guys better put something in there because I, as a taxpayer, am not going to pay for his ignorance. We're not gonna get sued because he wants to tell somebody to get a permission slip because they have a religious whatever on their head. It just can't happen.
I can follow up on that.
I mean, I'd be concerned with leaving the and similar items in there, that you're gonna have some, administrators say, well, I can tell you, you can't wear that because it's an and similar item. Um, And then who makes the decision of what a similar item is?
Then you're going on a case by case basis.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Pick and choose a world.
And I mean, again, it just becomes very difficult, like wear a headband maybe, but not a scarf. I mean, it just seems like you'd be forced to draw lines that do, I mean, there's gotta be discretion, right? You can't write a set of rules without providing discretion, and ultimately you gotta trust the people who are exercising that discretion, but guided discretion is the goal. And if you have words like similar items, I think that, can put the person, it can end up with situations that either discretion is abused or it's perceived to be abused, and that's not good for this.
Any items that are not listed, we could put a simple disclaimer, will be decided on a case by case
Well, but
basis,
that's-
because for the future too, because we don't.
But that's the whole point, Jim, is to take that unlimited, unfettered discretion out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because, I'm working with kids. I know it's not a trendy thing now, but like visor, well, I got a visor on, it's not a hat. And it would prevent those fights from happening where kids can look at this and also understand that, well, we're not gonna list hats and baseball caps, it's hats and similar items, because it could be a cap, it could be a hat, it could be a visor, something to that effect. Oh dear, this is gonna be crazy with the feedback.
Yes.
I can understand what the gentleman behind me is saying, because when looking at the idea of the do-rags,
Uh-huh.
that is a culture. And there is a reason why they are worn, which is very different than wearing, a bandana. My son likes to tie his bandanas on, but of course, I'm not going to allow him to wear that to school because there's no real necessity for it. I can understand a yarmulke has a necessity to it.
Mhm.
To the Jewish community. Do-rags have a necessity to our Black community. So I think that's why we're being so nitpicky here, especially when we're looking at, diverse language and culturally equitable pieces, so that, again, we're not falling into a pitfall where
Right.
it's opening the district to liability, but it's also sending a very clear message, right? That this is what is allowed, and we don't need to split hairs, because we all work with children in here, or have children, and I don't know if any of these kids like mine, but my kid finds the most smallest of loopholes, and I'm like, oh, so I get it, and these kids are gonna do that. What teenager, what high school, middle school student isn't gonna try to, say, it says don't push this button, but what if I tap it? I didn't really push it. We know that's going to occur. I think that's where we're coming with the language piece of it.
It's called paying attention to detail.
It is, but the thing is, if our kids are smart enough to do that, our administrators need to be as quick and as accepting.
So I'm looking for that page, the PINS referral where it still is questionable. Can you help me with which page that was on? Get lost in these.
We're looking at the
No.
matrix.
And the matrices.
Oh, it's at the end,
It's at the
Right
bottom
here.
It's outside of the matrix.
page 36.
It's just kind of a catch-all.
I think when this was presented to the board, the idea was that
I see.
the PINS referral was kind of randomly inserted in the matrix at various points, and it wasn't particularly, rational. And that the truth is, it's just not used very often, because for one thing, the Department of Probation just doesn't have the resources to even have a decade. So that you really are, by pulling it out of the matrix, the idea is, it is sort of a remedy, somewhat of last resort, or it's only going to be utilized when there's an expectation that the county will respond, and that's going to be really, again, probably when you have a parent asking for it too, and when there's some pretty serious misconduct involved. So I'm not sure we're making a mistake to pull it out of the matrix. I just don't see that particular provision as likely to be misused, because there are other checks But I do think some of the things that have come up here about dress codes, deserve a really careful first look. Because, they get dated and those are things that a lot of kids are affected by. on a daily basis.
And I'll be honest with you, I think the kids are ready to have positive, productive conversation about it. It's teaching them to do it in a platform that's appropriate to make that positive change. A lot of them have come to me in the past 5 months and they're ready to talk about it. It's just trying to figure out a way to do it because revamping a dress code is tricky, to make sure that you have community support as well. So I'm not sure where to go with that in terms of dress code, but it definitely has some conversations through.
Do we have a number of students on the committee that reviews the code of conduct?
I'm not sure who was on the committee. I know Mr. Andriano was chairing it. I do know that a lot of these conversations do happen in the principal's advisory that we have once a month as well.
Those were the students that he told me he spoke with.
I understand, what you were saying, Jimmy, as far as taking it out of the matrix. It seems to me that when it was in the matrix, you had to get to it in the matrix.
Yeah, there was a certain way to get there.
Now, the way we're seeing it, it gives more of an easier way to get there. You understand what I'm saying?
Because it's just so, it's because. it's
So
at the
you had
end
to
of
follow all the
everything.
steps to get there when it was in the matrix,
It
but it's,
says-
you can,
But it wasn't in certain areas where it probably should have been, and then in certain areas it was in there where it didn't really need to be in there. So I think the idea was, well, if we put it outside of it, it's an option, but it's not, but I do see, everything is always up for interpretation and how you read things. So I do see what you're saying, Julio, that,
What if we
now it
added-
looks as if, that, well, any of these kind of things
No, that's how it said.
could lead, might lead to it.
No,
you
it
know?
says.
It does, it's all of it.
Not when you go back to the definition.
all right, Laura has an idea. I think.
What if we added a clause that says any of the above violations can result in a referral to an outside agency, including a PINS referral? But we add a clause that says after the student has worked through the matrix. So that way we know a first offense isn't going to result in PINS. The student has documented going through and has had, past history. So that way there's that specific wording or that verbiage that the student has worked through the matrix.
I understand that, but like, if there is no grace period, so said student can have, go from 8th grade to 9th grade, or 7th grade to 8th grade, which is a difficult transition. But not know the rules, get in trouble several times, and then get told, rehabilitate himself, and then a year later, what happens if he gets in trouble again? Do we refer him to PINS? Like, there's no just.
Has he worked through or she
You know what I'm
worked through the
saying?
matrix, or how does
Has
it
he
work?
worked in the matrix? And
Do we start over?
if you read a little bit lower, underneath everything, it says, this is still under the discretion of the principal, and on a case-by-case basis, this can be changed for any situation. So they can still skip 1, 2, and 3 of the matrix, and go right to the referral. That's why I don't like it.
Well, I think the example that's there in the definition of PINS is when it comes to drugs. That's not going to be the third time you're caught with drugs. It's when you're caught with marijuana, it does say there that there will be a PINS referral. Now, whether or not they're going to take it, but there can be a referral on the very first instance. So it depends on the egregiousness of what has occurred. It won't be for small level things. And I'm wondering to what extent we're getting deep in the weeds on PINS when I don't know of a single PINS referral that has been made since January when I joined this. But, not saying that there wasn't one, but there wasn't one that was necessarily reported.
My question is, why are we only talking about PINs? There's so many other proactive referrals that can be put in there to work with the family. You hear PINs and you think automatically, it's negative and it's bad, and it does come with that. But there's also other services that the county provides that can be given to the families and the students that should be part of this code of conduct. like SPOA, case management, counseling referral, CARES referral. There are so many services available to the families and students that could stop moving up the matrix, that could stop or prevent students from moving up the matrix ladder that aren't even addressed.
That's a really good point.
Now, just like how she was saying, a lot of those things could be implemented way before you guys even got the pins.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys have like actually looked into what happens to kids when they get into that system. But it's something that you guys should really look into. I for one, okay, I'm not telling you because I read it out of a book. I went through it. So there's nothing that you guys can tell me that is good about pins, okay? When a child gets put into an institution, because just like how we agree that in the school, the rules aren't put together on everybody equally. Same way in that court system. So you guys need to think that before you destroy a child's life. And I understand that we might not have put a PINS petition on a child since she's been here. But I know a child who has a IEP and they have ADHD. The school tried to put the child on medication, and because the parent would not put the child on medication, they tried to put them on PINS. That ain't right. You guys don't have that authority. So you guys giving all this discretion to these administrators who abuse it is what your problem is. And if you tighten up the reading so that it's not just loose for them to be able to put a child on pins because he ran down the hallway, then you might be able to move somewhere.
I like the idea that Rochelle had about maybe somewhere in there listing the other ability for referrals, those positive interventions that can be utilized. You know, whether it's counseling referrals, whether it's, and I don't know who would do that at the district,
Typically
guidance, or if we had social workers that would do it, or, but I think that is a wonderful step in the right direction of moving in a positive way.
I think that would be a good addition to any part of the matrix.
they're proactive services.
Yeah, like with our connections of our groups downstairs, right? Through the community action, through Liberty Partnership. We have a Hillside, we have a number of agencies that we work with. Yeah,
That's a really good idea.
and
There's also agencies in Buffalo that come down here. I mean, that's part of my job as a social worker for BOCES. They come down from Buffalo here and work with families that, and their services we don't have around here, that this district is not utilizing, that are so proactive.
I mean, I'm one of those utilities that you don't seem to want to use, even though that the parents have.
oh boy. Okay,
All right. Right, unless we have any other direct comments on the code of conduct, I think we need to get into the regular meeting.
thank you, Mrs. Vidal.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So we're looking at some revisions that before we vote on it.
Oh, no, we can make that revision. I already made the change on here.
Okay.
On the code of conduct that we had talked about.
All right.
I did not hear that there was the final answer, although it does talk about, I just lost that page. There we go. So down at the bottom where it does say, where we have the comment about any of the above violations can result in a referral to an outside agency, including a PINS referral upon the recommendation of school administrator. Just look at this very quickly. I think the idea of listing out with some of those other, especially community partnerships that we have, And just as a reminder, there's also that other position that we're trying to hire right now. It was a new position for that community engagement coordinator, although I might have the title wrong. It's gone through a few different iterations, but it's having someone to also help and oversee, because these things change over time, and there are some new relationships and new things that, as we've heard, that we don't continue, that we don't currently have, that will be part of that person's job. It's just to make sure that's happening at all levels for us. So we could list those out. And so then I think that approval would be including those two changes.
Look next month and see if there's any other revelations that come out. Take it to the planning process.
I think what we would be better off doing is approving it with those changes, making those changes. It's not to print right now, but we do have to have one in place by the end of the year.
Right.
You can always change it at any other time during the year. You don't only have to do this once a year, but you do have to do it once a year. That makes sense. Yes, so this is the time for this one here.
Which is also on page 23
Oh, thank you.
and 29.
Violation of confidentiality, to know how many pin controls are made per year and what can be wrong.
No,
I mean, just, that might just be a useful piece of information, because I suspect they're extraordinarily good. And they
especially
wouldn't be
lately.
Running down the hall, you know.
Oh, no, never.
I'd be interested in knowing if we can, just what, types of violations we're having. How often are we using suspensions, detentions, and for what types of things? I mean, because that's not information that ever gets to us.
It's your discipline report. We can have that for the July 5th on just what happened this past year.
That would be great.
Mhm.
That's upon request by the board. You can't be told. It's the only thing.
I don't need the names.
No.
I never been offered it, and I never knew I could ask for it.
All right. I think it's time. Let's get into it. I'm gonna call this meeting a few minutes late. Jim, why don't you start with the Pledge of Allegiance?
sure will.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, I'd like to ask you to take a moment for personal reflection or silent prayer. Thank you. All right, we need to make a couple of changes to the agenda, if I could. I would like to remove
Postpone.
Yep. Let's see, where is it?
Okay. It's towards the end here.
Yeah, so. Under new business. I believe.
Here we go. It would be items L,
L, M,
M,
and
and
N.
N.
We're gonna remove those from today's meeting and we will revisit them on the 5th. They're not ready.
Yeah, these guys have just another change too. I know last time our discussion items took so long that people who had signed up to speak already left.
Mhm.
And it looks like we have a lot of long discussion items again tonight. I don't know if anybody signed up to speak, but I wonder if we would want to move the public comment ahead of discussion. I don't know if anybody has signed up to speak, but to ask them to sit around for an hour and a half.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any objection to that. Anybody else? We got 3 people here. So we're gonna make that number 3. instead. Yep. Is this resolution on there?
Yes, I just
Okay.
need signatures.
All right. I think that's it for changes. Do you have any? All right, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as modified. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have some commendations. We have congratulations going out to the Harold Dutton Spotlight Award winners. Harold Dutton is a longtime employee who did a lot of good, and this meeting, we're recognizing Terry Singh, Phoenix Langdon, Jaden Marvin, Reese Schreiber, John Perkins, Kristen Slogano, Josh Sisson, Hayden Schwindler, Olivia Black, Xavier Yeager, Nicole Portlow, Carmen Hasper, Tyler Miller, Mason Tanya, Dylan Tanya, Megan Picolny, Rhiannon Taylor, and Samantha Scher. We had some inductees go on the wall out in the hallway. Michael Domboski, William Gabler, Stephen Sue, I don't know how to say that one. Sue, John Baker, Dave Carucci, Ryan Koss, Catherine Lee Kenny, Ruth Elmore Howard, and James M. Stitt. We also had some people go up on the Athletic Wall of Fame. From 2020, Charles Smith, James Wright, our own Julio Fuentes, Bill Frazier. From the 2021 class was Ben Carucci, Katie Irving, Sarah Walcott, Brandy Wanglin, Demetrius Bailey, and Coach Dave Block. And for this year, we had Brian George, Molly Chola McMahon, Nicole Kelby, John Eaton. Also, 5 couples were recognized for providing dedicated service and leadership to the Sports Booster Club. That'd be Joyce and Bud Batinsky, Betty and Tom Carney, Pam and Jerry Nutt, Beth and Jim Lee, Sally and Mike Nenham. We also want to say congratulations to all the graduates of the class of 2022. And congratulations to the teachers that received the state park grants, Jim Charles, Matt Wolleman, and Dan Freeman. Communications, we had a couple of emails, one from O'Brien Jenkins, one from Doctors Lawrence and Ramming. And now on to, we're gonna insert public comment section here. So just to review, the following are not permitted. You've all heard this before. The use of an individual staff member's name, comments that involve personalities, comments about the performance or conduct of individual staff members, comments about specific and or confidential student-related issues. We have 15 minutes allotted. We've got 3 people signed up for about 3 minutes each. So we should be able to get through this. First up, I had Antonio Scordo. Is going to talk about the change in the start time.
Sure. I have a handout. I'll give everybody in just a minute, but my name is Antonio Scordo. I live over on 6th Street. I have a daughter that just graduated this past Saturday from Olean, and I have another daughter that's going to be a junior next year. I am greatly concerned about the proposed change for school start time for our adolescents. What I'm saying is only applying to the secondary students, not the elementary students, by the way. Project Lead the Way, my daughter's part of this, starts already at 7:30. There's no way you can get through Project Lead the Way and shave 20 minutes off that class, meaning Project Lead the Way would have to start at 7:10 in the morning. My daughter has said, they think I'm crazy. They think I'm thinking you're crazy if they think I'm coming to school that early. And she's not the only one. She polled 10 of her classmates that are going to be in Project Lead the Way. Every single one of them got back to her saying that they did not want to do Project Lead the Way. This is a college credit bearing class from RIT about STEM and STEAM and applied physics and applied engineering. This is a great concern. And you can't move it after school either, because these are the kids that are committed and they're working. They're all involved in sports, multiple after-school activities. My daughter has several clubs. She's in the theater, she has dance class, she thinks she's going to do tennis next year as well. And she's just a typical one of the Project Lead the Way kids. Oh, and she's also going to be volunteering at the hospital next fall. You can't shift the school to start that. She'd have to leave the house before 7 o'clock in the morning to get to school, as well as there's other kids that have further distances to walk that would have to leave even earlier. There's one kid I know that lives across town that would have to leave about quarter to 7 to get to school in time for Project Lead the Way. There are also kids that have come from Portville and Hinsdale and other surrounding school districts because they don't have Project Lead the Way to come here for. Project Lead the Way is very valuable. In addition, this flies in the face of all the research that we've seen for the past 20 or 30 years regarding sleep patterns of adolescents. It changes. It's biology, it's physiology. It is fact that the biology changes so that they are up later at night and they want to sleep in. And if they're up and physically, their brains still aren't functioning. And the sleep deprivation is associated with earlier school start times. And with the sleep deprivation, it's associated with increased risks of anxiety, depression, increased suicidal ideation, increased risk-taking behaviors, decreased motivation, increased stress, increased cognitive deficits, impairments in executive functions such as memory, organization, and time management, deficits in attention and memory and abstract thinking, lower academic achievement. We don't need sleep deprivation for our kids in this district. In fact, we should be having the conversation the other way. Their research shows that the later school start times are, the more likely the kids are actually to come to school, not be tardy, have higher academic performance. And there's some research studies that have shown that simply moving a school start time to 9 o'clock for adolescents has an entire academic performance level, an entire academic year performance level increase in student test scores. I'm not saying that we need to do that, but at least don't move it 20 minutes earlier. Don't take 20 minutes of sleep away from my daughter. As it is now, she gets up right at 7 o'clock, flies and gets over here by 7:30 for class. She'd have to get up that much earlier. So in addition to that, there's so much research out there on it that the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the Children, Youth, and Family Office of the American Psychological Association, and I have their statements here for you, have all put out papers and policy statements saying schools should not start earlier than 8:30 in the morning. In fact, the later the better. So I know you want to save some money, but don't do it at expense of these Project Lead the Way kids. I mean, that is a valuable program. My daughter is on her 3rd year of it. There are other students, and it is college credit. Thank you. I'm just going to pass this out for you. I've lots of copies.
Just send it to the group.
All right, while he's finishing that up, we'll get Tim Sherlock.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, I have allergies, so I will try my best. So I'm Tim Sherlock, you already know that. I actually recently moved, so I now live on South 18th Street here in Olean. I wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, our diversity and equity. I forget what I emailed saying I was going to talk about, but we talked about a little bit about it within the code of conduct. Some of the concerns I have is that I find it the struggle I'm having is following the chain of command when we have an issue in the district. And if it be a personnel issue, okay? I have followed that chain of command. I have worked with parents who are following that chain of command. What I find is that chain of command, and it's no offense to our superintendent, I see this in every district. It stops there. And our Board of Education never hears about it until somebody ruffles feathers. And then I get comments like, well, I didn't know that. That concerns me. That we're not all on the same page. Going with the DEI, and I'm glad to see it on the discussion section of how needed it is. We just talked about it looking at our dress code and the lack of understanding around cultural dress. We had an incident occur which our policy, and I brought it up last time, throwing it out. You create a policy that is so loosely written that we end up violating our students. And that happened at graduation. Our transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary students fought valiantly to be recognized for who they are, only to be shot down, and then to have their parents called because that policy provides for it, outing them, which resulted in one of those students being kicked out of his home. I'm sorry, and this goes to Janine when she said parents love tell the parents. This is what we were talking about. You placed a child in danger because of a poorly written policy. It is not fair, it is not equitable, and it is not safe, and it opened up the district to major liability because one student was 18. We never stopped to question whether we're violating HIPAA. We never stopped to question the age of our students and their rights. Split decisions are made because we don't think ahead, because when given the policy, we rush through it because I've heard board members say, I'm so sick of talking about this. The implications are far and wide. The duty of this district, of everybody in this room, in these buildings, is to serve children. Not personal agendas, not careers. It is to serve children. Period. And when I see staff and administrators or any of the like doing the exact opposite, then I say this, there is no business in this district for those people.
10 seconds.
That is the job of the board and the administration, is to work together to formalize and cauterize a strong district for our children.
Thank you. Rochelle Wiesman.
Stand back here.
Sure.
No,
We can hear you.
Mine is piggybacking on the same policy. I just think that using the word discretion when talking about transgender, it's not equitable, because if a student goes into any teacher or administrator in this district and says, I'm pregnant, they cannot call the parent. It's against the law. They have to come up with a plan with the student on how to tell a parent. They have to develop this, make sure the student is assessed and make sure the student is safe. But under no circumstances can anyone in this district call a parent and say, your daughter came to me and said that she was pregnant. So I don't understand, as a parent, as a social worker, and as an educator, how these two policies are so different within the same district. Because essentially they're not equitable, and you're not considering the safety of the student. So the policy for pregnancy, or the procedure for pregnancy, because it's a HIPAA violation if you call the parent or guardian, is the same when you're talking about transgender and sexuality. And it's different in this district, and it is not equitable, and it is not okay. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted everyone to hear that. I don't know if when you made this policy, you understood that it's not the same as if the student goes in and says, I'm pregnant. Because it should be. Because as a social worker, if I've had students come in and say, I'm pregnant, I cannot tell anyone. I have to, one, make sure they're safe, and try to develop a plan with that student to tell their parent or guardian, but I am not allowed to tell anyone. And that falls here in the district. You have counselors, you have teachers, you have administrators, they all have to follow that same.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna jump back to discussion items. And first up, we have the DEI work group.
Well, this was a standing item, and we just wanted to make sure that we touched base on it one more time. There was a final meeting of the DEI work group. And just as a final, what's been happening since then, there are plans for different training going on this summer. We have some administrators who are going to be trained. And they're taking that framework that, if you remember, there was this big chart, which is the reason why I'm doing this with my hands. There was this big chart where they're to write down the action steps of what it's going to look like in each of the buildings. So we're now taking it to to the building level of personalizing it and making sure that everyone is aware of the different components of the statewide framework to begin with. Because we've been talking about it and the people who are in the work group have been talking about it, but this is something that everyone will be getting, just kind of getting into, know the language and start to understand that as we begin that path forward next year. Yeah.
Who's working on the actionable stuff about?
Everyone. Yeah, so it's happening at every building level.
That would be,
And district level partners are working on that with them. So Jennifer Kless and Jennifer Mahar and Mike Martell, that people who have district level administrative work that they do are also going to be assisting each of the buildings and working on it. So every administrator will have that training.
just the administrators.
No, that's the beginning of it, where the administrators who are going to be responsible for overseeing it in their building and making sure that it's there. Yes, we wanted to make sure that they got training. So they're going to get, they have a couple of different sessions coming right up in July.
So they'll be trained first,
But it's all the administrators.
and then,
Yes.
then that will then they will talk with their teachers and staff.
Yes, there is some teacher training, but there isn't
Okay.
anything that's mandatory. This is
Okay.
mandatory for all of our administrators. So everyone's speaking with the same voice and has the same level of understanding. There's a difference between my just giving someone a framework and saying, here, read this,
Yeah.
you should know about this.
Absolutely.
And then having an expert coming in and working with us and walking through the training and doing a summary of what each component of that framework would be.
Wouldn't that be staff development?
Why isn't it mandatory for all staff?
Well, it's not that it won't be mandatory, it isn't mandatory right now. They have some beginning works, and I know that the people who are on the committee were talking about what the next steps of training would be, but we don't have specific plans right now for mandatory training for everybody, except there will be some things on opening day to get us all kickstarted. That's the one time that we're all together on our opening days. And, with plans for professional development days or superintendent's conference days coming up in the year. But there isn't anything this summer that we're making everyone do during the summer before school starts.
So, being a part of that, work group,
Mhm.
we thought there would be like an understanding of maybe evaluating our administrators first to see where they're at. Is that would be any part of that training or anything like that? Just simply.
Are you talking about the inventory?
Yes.
So I believe that's part of it, but I don't know 100% if we're doing that with all of our administrators this summer or not. But I know that was something that was discussed. They also discussed having board members take that inventory as well. I just don't want to promise something that isn't already, that isn't going to happen.
And I just wanna be clear, where is the DEI work group, going? As far as, you said it was the final one, so where is it going after this?
Well, it was the final one for this year. We will have a committee because we have a committee in our policy. So a committee will be formed, and that's one of the very first things that I'm sure Jennifer Kless will be meeting with Dr. Morris about and setting up the committee. And picking up where everyone left off, taking those recommendations for sure.
And I do have on my very colorful form here that Jen handed to us at our last meeting, that we do have some professional learning scheduled for all staff on October 21st, the 30th of January, and March 17th. So we must be doing some work, obviously. May not be the whole thing, but there will be some
Yes.
that will be focused
Yes.
around that kind of responsibility you're teaching for the teachers and the staff, not just, I know it's the teachers, but I'm assuming that it would be.
Building the
Yeah,
capacities of
as well.
everybody. It, just to make our expectations realistic, it won't happen overnight, but it is into those plans for those superintendent's conference days during the year.
All right.
I guess I'm just confused as to why it's a final meet, like why this isn't meeting over the summer and continuing on, and I think why we're resetting up a new group next year when we already have a group of people who are in place working. I guess that, I mean, when you say final, I'm
So-
not really sure why it's ending.
Well, this work group did the beginning work and it was the end of the year for that work group. One of the things we noticed in that work group is there were people who were missing who need to be there. Some of the things we've talked about earlier this evening. That's also, if there, that can be a manifestation of not having the right people at the table. It was not, that work group was not put together to make sure that you had every constituency there, to make sure that you had representatives from every school building there. But this is critical that moving forward, we have to have someone from every school building. So it's not going to be the same committee. The committee itself is going to have those representatives, and you would have to have someone that, like, from the high school. We didn't have anybody from the high school who was there that would need to be in that committee moving forward, especially to see the kind of profound change you need to see. So the committee, the makeup of the committee will change. Certainly, I believe it was stated at the last work group meeting that Jennifer was asking, she wanted to make it clear that she didn't want everybody who attended those meetings, which were, it was a challenge. And it was for some emotionally draining. And there are a few members who made it clear that they want their work on the committee to be done. They don't want to feel that they have to move forward. So we didn't want to make everybody be on the same committee again. The committee itself will change. The makeup of the committee will change for sure.
Well, and that's probably good, in all honesty. That's good. We need new people. We need new ideas. We need people that are looking from the outside, looking in, and, so we want people that want to be part of it, obviously. So I don't see anything wrong with changing the makeup of the group. I think it's probably a good idea.
It's going to evolve.
That's right. Everything's flexible, changing.
All right, thank you for that report. Kelly, did you have anything for the district engage group?
So it should be engagement.
Okay.
So the district engagement group is formerly the TAPS group. That's what we've decided to kind of go with, unless we can come up with something better. We haven't yet.
No DAG.
That's fine.
What?
No DAG. You don't want to call it DAG. District engagement group.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so when we left there, I kind of thought we were going to have our form up and running on the website like the next week. I have not gotten any notification that we did do that yet.
It's not up yet, but I did get notification that the website's ready to go. So we're ready to rock with that. I think
Okay, so
tomorrow, but I'll have to talk with Mr. Friends here because Mr. Martell is not with us.
So, yes, hopefully it will be up by the end of this week, and we will be ready to start accepting nominations for teachers and staff members who, people feel have really gone above and beyond over the last year. We are moving forward with just doing 2 times a year awarding these awards. We have kind of changed, we really don't want, it's gone back and forth. How many teachers do we want to, put up for this nomination every year? We really feel like if we had one person from each building winning this award every single time we gave it out, it would kind of degrade what the award was. So we are going back to just 2 people winning the award each time around.
For the entire district?
Yes.
Okay.
For the Ron Shoup Award. For the leader award, I think we're also doing 2, and I don't remember, I think it's still just 2, but that would be everybody else within the district would fall into that category.
For the Ron Shoup is teachers.
Ron Shoup is teachers only.
And then the leader of the pack award would
One
be
twice a year.
two winners
Two
twice a year.
winners twice a year.
Yes.
Sorry.
And you're allowed to piggyback for one more time.
So,
if you-
yep, if you've been nominated, you'll be notified that you were nominated, so that you do get to know that somebody, saw something that you did. But you'll also be in the running the following time if you don't win the award the first time, because we're not sure. I mean, it could be that one time we're gonna get 10 people nominated, and one time we might get 2 people nominated. So we might have, 8 or so other people that, in the first time around, really maybe could have beat out those other 2 people. Not that, you're saying.
Yeah, we have to be really careful with that.
If you got two great
so-
candidates.
If anybody beating anybody out.
Well, that's what I mean.
So
But-
who's choosing these people?
It's being
There's-
done by committee.
So the superintendent and HR will receive the notifications first. And then they will be bringing all of those to our committee. And that committee will then go through all of them and make sure that, we'll decide from there. And we haven't really decided on the official criteria yet. I think it's kind of a, let's see what we get, to start off with, and then we're kind of gonna dig through there. 'Cause there might be, it might be that something just stands out as like, wow, this is definitely the top, and other things might be kind of more wishy-washy.
We're gonna use the award descriptors as the rubric to figure it out. So it's whoever is more closely aligned with the descriptor of the award itself,
And I
which will
think-
be right there on the
Yeah.
website.
I think we'll have to see, how it goes. We don't know. I mean, it's gonna be a free form to write out what your, nomination is based off of. So, some things may stick out as, much different than others, if you will. So we'll see. We really don't know what we're gonna get exactly. And then, beyond that, we're gonna continue on once we have this up and running. And we've met, the hope would be to meet in August. We do have a date set for July so that we continue and we can start making sure things are actually coming in. And then we have a time set in August that we're gonna meet to pick those winners and be prepared to nominate the winners right at the opening day. And as far as the awards go, we're still kind of leaning towards this parking spot idea. Because that was like something that really stood out and was asked for. The question is, we're working, we were gonna work with buildings and
Movable
grounds to
signs,
see
yeah.
about having movable signs. Because initially, we were gonna put 1 at each building. And now that we're only gonna have 2 winners, you won't need 1 at each building. So we just need like a pole that we can stick the sign on at the building. So we were looking into that. Beyond that, the leader award is gonna be something different. We were looking at having maybe 5 different awards that could be chosen. So there might be like a mug, a shirt, a glass of some sort. Something like that, that people could go in and look at a catalog of like, these are your 5 options and pick.
Is that the same number 2, did you say? 2 people, 2,
Yep.
2 winners?
So there'll be
2
4
times?
awards given
Okay.
total, twice a year.
4 in a year.
4 in a year. And then beyond that, once we have that started, we'll really only need to meet in, just before August and just before January. So we were planning on trying to get together some forms of events that could get staff together and just start really building that community again. We've talked about possible kickball games and just other like getting together and but that's has not been our focus.
Like some alumni, different kinds of games, like with getting alumni against somebody else or something like. Probably.
Yeah, like the Board of Education versus the winner.
Yeah, there you
winner.
go. Yeah, something like that. That'd be fun.
I mean,
I don't know what it'll be, but we have talked about trying to get some events started where we can have more open community. But that's probably something we'll focus on after we nominated and given out our first awards. Maybe I wouldn't even say September, like maybe in October, because everybody knows September is a terrible month for teachers. It's just not the month to ask anybody to do anything, so. But let's say maybe in October we'll make some plans.
And May, and April,
Most of the school.
big March.
Oh,
Yeah.
stop.
What are you trying to say, Mary?
It's a lot every month.
All right.
Yeah, yes.
All right, thanks, that's good.
That is the plan. So hopefully we will get something and it will go out via Parent Square to the entire community, right? So that we know that it's available for you to start nominating.
And anybody can nominate?
Yes, anybody in the
Anybody.
Olean community. So, I mean, it could be grandparents, parents, next door neighbors, whatever.
Okay, awesome.
So we'll probably try and get something out there, because it will be, the form will be on our website, it won't be on Parent Square. So we'll try and get something out, maybe some kind of news, release to our greater community, so that if there is somebody who doesn't get Parent Square notifications, they'll know also.
Melissa's always working on that with the press release.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Next up, we have our team from Futures Education Services. They presented to us a meeting ago or 2 meetings ago. And we had some questions and there's more information that they want to share with us.
Good evening. My name is Rich Labrie, and I was not able to present the Medicaid report at your meeting 2 weeks ago. As you may recall, your administrators on the previous Friday, 2 days before your board meeting, had a number of questions with regard to our calculations. And rather than report information that we were not totally sure was correct, we chose to not report out and to meet with your administrative team again, which we did on the 23rd, last Thursday. We all sat in the same room. Your administrators, myself, and your billing provider from the BOCES. And we actually reran some of the reports that we needed to clarify and answer the questions that were being addressed. And the result is that we reissued the report on Sunday evening to your administrative staff, along with a draft of a PowerPoint presentation for this evening's meeting, and met again this afternoon to review both the final, what we consider to be the final report, and the PowerPoint. And subsequent to our meeting this afternoon, we made some additional changes to the reports. The numbers didn't change, but we clarified some of the answers to some of the questions, added some additional information, and basically then reissued the report earlier this afternoon. So given that, I believe we have the PowerPoint to go through. If whoever's there can bring it up on the screen.
Mark will bring it up for us.
It's across the hall. Okay, so while we're waiting, what we have is an overflow room across the hall that enables us to meet here. So if we got to the point where there were more guests than we could accommodate in the room, we have it live streaming right across the room. Anyone was over there and needed to speak, then we could have them come in and speak and then go back over there. It's a way that we can maintain using the boardroom where our audio visual works a whole lot better. Our technology is more reliable. And then you get the benefit of the face-to-face discussion with your fellow board members. That was an idea that we found in another school district that Jenny brought to our attention. And it was just one of those, well, why didn't we think of that at the moment?
Well, and the idea too that, we're going to be working on our auditorium.
Right.
soon.
Well, that's coming too.
So
Yeah.
it kind of made sense to have a different plan.
Yep.
for everybody.
Everything went black.
Can they still hear us, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rich,
So-
are you guys able to hear us better this evening?
I'm sorry,
Are you able to hear us better this evening?
I can, but some of the board members are not very clear. So I would just ask them if I can't hear the question, I'll just ask someone to repeat it.
Okay, great, we can do that.
Yeah, some of them sound hollow as if we're in a tunnel.
Okay.
We'll use our merry voice.
Everybody should.
Again, this is a presentation on your municipal Medicaid through the school-based health services. Next slide.
You still there with us, Rich?
Cricket.
I've still got the first slide up.
We're on the third one now.
Okay, it's not. It's
Are
not.
you able to see our screen?
I may be able to if your superintendent gives me co-host privilege, I think I could share it from my screen.
What screen do you guys see right now? Anybody out there in Zoom land?
I've got slide 1.
Okay.
How did that? So Mark, are you able to do that? To go up into the settings, the Zoom settings and let him co-present? Because that should still then go out to YouTube, whatever he's presenting, right?
I've got a written copy in front of me.
Make him a co-host.
So I can go through from my written copy as long as you can see the slides as we move through them.
Yeah, we've got a good view.
Okay.
Okay. Slide 3, the New York Medicaid eligible services. Those come right out of the state plan and list those services related services for Medicaid eligible children that are Medicaid eligible. The next slide for our assumptions. Our analysis is made utilizing the related services frequency and duration. And what that means is, for instance, if a child is receiving speech and language and it's 30 minutes twice a week, that's 60 minutes a week times 36 weeks. So we calculate the minutes for each service, related service to each child. And that is extrapolated from your special education services report. And that comes directly from their IEP student management information system and from frontline Medicaid reports. Our estimate, and this is important, is that the total potential Medicaid revenue is based on the assumption that all Medicaid eligible students are being billed for all Medicaid eligible services. And we certainly recognize that not all students services are in fact qualified to be billed because of differences in the delivery system, or that some Medicaid eligible services may require more work than is justified by the potential amount of revenue in that category. And what that means is that you may have Medicaid eligible services being delivered by non-Medicaid provider approved professionals. That's not to say that they're not certified or licensed, but they're not approved providers under Medicaid regulations. For the purposes of our estimate, we utilize the district reported number of Medicaid eligible students receiving related services, that being 160 as of the 23rd of this month, last Thursday, and a calculated Medicaid eligibility rate of 66.12%, which is based on the current ratio of Medicaid eligible students in the district to those special education students receiving special ed related services, of which there are 242, as being Medicaid eligible. Next slide, again, shows our relevant assumptions. We often estimate that group services and individual services are on a 75-25% split. In your case, we were able to extrapolate exactly the percentage of group services versus individual services because the information was all in the reports that we had gathered. Your special ed enrollment is 391. Your special ed related services students are 242. 160 of them are Medicaid eligible, and hence the Medicaid eligibility rate of 66.12. If you go to the bottom, you'll see that the average student attendance days is 90%. Typically, we use 95%, but given COVID last year and the year before, there were more student absences among special ed students than there would have normally been, or more than what we normally see in non-COVID years. Next slide. This is a dramatic change from our first report. You can see your Medicaid revenue, and unbeknownst to us in December, you have actually two accounts for which you classify your Medicaid revenue. At the time we were there, we were only aware of one of them, that being the federal share account. And so we went back and Jen ran new reports for us again last Thursday. So this is information that's year to date as of the 23rd, and includes $139,565 of accounts receivable. What that means is that the BOCES has submitted claims in those amounts in May and early June, but you won't see the actual revenue until either, you won't receive the check until either the end of June or in July. And that's often the case. In the report, you'll see where we actually calculate a 3-year average of your Medicaid revenue. The reason being is we recognize that oftentimes, especially in the third quarter of the year, that your Medicaid revenue transcends fiscal years. And so we use a 3-year average as a benchmark for comparative purposes. We also use a benchmark of what you received in the current year, again, for comparative purposes, or in the previous year, depending on what time of the year we're doing the report. But you will see that you've had in the last 3 years, you've had an increasing amount of Medicaid revenue to the district. Next page, potential Medicaid revenue.
About the previous slide.
I'm sorry?
Can I ask a question about the previous slide?
Sure.
It's exactly a 50-50 split,
Yes,
state revenue and federal Medicaid revenue.
yes.
So exactly the same amount. I mean, there's no difference. Like, so in a lot of medical programs, the state provides funding for things the federal government might not. But
Yeah.
here, this is just it's a joint program. Half the money comes from the state, half the money comes from the federal.
Correct. The state in the regulation, and you'll see it in the reports on page 4, basically says that the state receives 50% of the Medicaid funds generated through the district. And so as the district receives the checks, they split it 50-50 between the state and the federal accounts. With regard to the potential Medicaid revenue, as I said, the district has received, as of the 23rd, $834,163. And that includes the receivable of $139,565. Prior to this year, the district received an average of approximately $656,000. And using our Medicaid eligibility rate of 66.12, we've estimated that the district potential revenue is approximately $1.1 million, $1,189,917. A difference of about $355,700 from your current amount, including the receivable, and a difference of about $533,790 from the 3-year average of Medicaid revenue. The next slide shows your IDEA grants, the amount that you received. And the following slide identifies how you use your IDEA grant money. And we identified several line items in your IDEA grants where those providers may be providing Medicaid eligible services to Medicaid eligible students. And in 21-22, as I said, the district's receiving $629,000 and change in IDEA grant funds. And it appears that all the funds are expended for the benefit of students with disabilities, which is good. However, we approximated about 180,000 is being expended for professional services, which are Medicaid eligible, specifically for psychological services and speech. The district cannot be reimbursed for Medicaid services being supported through federal funding, i.e. IDEA. Now, however, the potential Medicaid reimbursement for psychological services is worth about $324,750. Where your current psychologists are not approved providers under Medicaid. Therefore, you cannot claim those psychological services being provided by those providers. And the fact that they're being funded through the IDEA grant also prohibits them from being reimbursed. We included in Appendix C, for those of you who want to actually look at provider qualifications, we included the qualifications for them. At our meeting last Thursday, with your district administrators and your billing provider, the BOCES, we talked about why the district may not be able to claim all the Medicaid funds for which it may be eligible. And this is the list of all of the things that impact why you may not be collecting all of the money for which you're eligible. Eligibility and ability to claim are separate issues. We quantify the eligibility, as I said at the beginning, assuming that all Medicaid eligible services are being billed for all Medicaid eligible students, and that is not the case. And as you look through these, some of them are relatively small in terms of the number of claims they affect. But when you add them all together, they represent a fairly significant amount of money. With regard to areas of opportunity, one of the things we see is it appears that since our initial report to management, that the district has received to date about $140,000 more in Medicaid revenue than the previous year. Knowing the previous stated reasons as to why the district may not be able to claim all of the Medicaid revenue for which it's eligible, provides both the district administration and the BOCES billing provider the information necessary. I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Back up one.
To the right page.
There.
Oh. Have we got the areas of opportunity slide up?
Yeah, now we're there.
Okay. Listing all the reasons as to why the district may not be able to claim all the Medicaid for which it's eligible provides both district administration and the BOCES the ability to continue to improve the overall Medicaid reimbursement process. And in particular, if you were to hire a school psychologist who is an approved provider under Medicaid, or who can be approved provider, and you fund them other than it through IDEA, and you shift the caseload of the Medicaid eligible students to that person, then you would be able to access the reimbursement for all of those psychological services. In addition, if some of those services are provided through hiring clinical social workers, those also make those a lot of those services Medicaid eligible. So there's things that the district can do, but I'm the first one to say, if you're satisfied with the quality of the services being provided to your students in those areas, I wouldn't worry too much about the Medicaid reimbursement. Now, I'm saying that that 300,000 is not my money, but it's something to consider as you move forward and you look at the impact of changing things and revising things. As delineated in the full report, the district can maximize their potential Medicaid revenue with a number of procedural best practices, and I have to say some of which are already in practice. In the future, as I said, in order to maximize your district Medicaid reimbursement, management may wish to transfer the identified IDEA funded positions to the general fund and fund non-Medicaid eligible services through its IDEA grant. And that's basically it. The numbers look substantially different than they did from our report generated last winter. But these are the numbers, and they look, I think they look much better on behalf of the district and management than they did. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
First question I have is a clarification on the slide where you talked about $533,000 over a 3-year average. So can you just clarify, was that 533,000 for the 3 years together, or is that each year?
That's an average of each of the last 3 years. So it's an average of 440,000 in 2019-20, 694 in 2021, and 834 in 21-22.
That's stuff that we would have been eligible to bill for.
No. That's just an average of what you received.
But then if you compare that to the 1.2 million, which we were eligible for, and subtract that blended average, you get 500,000.
Correct.
All right.
So it's per year. It's not a combination of all three.
Okay.
But it's on average, so it's not the actual,
Yep, I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't a.
The one thing I will also say,
Total.
if I can, it's not in the slide presentation, but I think it bears merit, is that your BOCES billing provider, their success rate is a little over 96%, which means that of the claims that they are submitting on behalf of the district, roughly 96% of those claims are approved for reimbursement. And those that go into either the disapproval or the pending category are reviewed the following month. And if they find it to be a mistake or a missing signature or a missing prescription, they refile. And so their success rate on what they are submitting is relatively high, and that's a good thing. That says that bodes well for both the district and for the work being provided by the BOCES.
But do we have other people besides BOCES people that are providing the work, or is it all BOCES people? How's that work?
So BOCES files the claims for us, but individual providers have to put stuff into the system. So if you have a speech pathologist, or if you have, a Jones Memorial occupational therapist or a physical therapist, they all put the information into Medicaid Direct. We have a secretary who then compiles everything and sends the data on to Erie One BOCES. Erie One BOCES actually files the Medicaid claims for us.
Okay.
They basically manage the information provided by the district.
Yes.
So where was the breakdown then? I just trying to figure this out then.
yeah.
Was it us then trying to get this?
There's
stuff?
that slide with the list of all the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some of them are.
But
pretty-
But is that not?
Names would be correctable if you can pen, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
if there's a missing signature, you could go get it.
Mark, can you go one slide up to number 10 there? Yeah, so if you look at this, there's a lot of reasons as to why we may not be able to file claims. This provides a lot of that there. Some of these things are easily correctable, other things are more difficult. So for instance, IEP session duration not met. If you have a 30-minute speech session and they're only in there for 20 minutes, you can't claim it. If
You
you
can
have
only,
a
you can
child,
only claim 15 minutes of it.
or right, yes,
Has to
I'm
be at
sorry,
least
yeah.
15.
Anything less than 15 minutes, you can't claim. If you have a student who is absent, the service has to be made up within that week, or you can't claim it, that gets more difficult. Trying to rearrange providers' schedules.
Well, and transiency of students was a problem too. Because we
Yeah,
noticed that some of those kids are no longer here, or they moved, and then you can't get the signature because we've lost all contact with the family.
yeah.
So you're saying we're trying, like, we're being billed by people and we're paying
We
for a
pay the
service that we're not
providers.
actually getting. We're not getting reimbursed for, but we're also not getting the service because the kid isn't there to get the service. So we're
No,
paying
not-
somebody and we're not.
No.
No, we're not being billed for services that they're not providing. but we can't get reimbursement for it. A lot of these are,
One kid.
yeah, I mean, a lot of these are costs where we've already, it's a speech pathologist, it's a,
Which
you
are on our
know,
payroll anyway.
they're already on the payroll. From outside services, they only bill us for services that they provide. However, say you have a group session for occupational therapy and there's 3 kids and 2 of the kids are absent that day and there's only 1 kid. We can't bill Medicaid for that because it's not a group session. There was only 1 kid in there. So we would only be billed for, you know, an individual session, you know, which is actually higher than a group session. So but we can't seek Medicaid reimbursement on it because it didn't meet the IEP.
And it's not on the IEP as an individual, so the
Yes.
fact that 2 didn't show up, you can't get the
Yes.
higher rate.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you can get more creative with those things. If you hypothetically have 2 occupational therapists providing group sessions at the same time, you could combine them. It gets really difficult in the heat of the moment when you have providers that are trying to boom, 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 get things in. You got 30 minutes, you gotta get them in, you know, it gets to be more difficult. You know,
But part of it I can see already is provider training and, you know, again, it kind of drives me crazy because I bring these contracts up every single year. And every single year I've said, let's sit down with the hospital and talk it through, and we never do. But 40% of these, if we could tell providers, we can't build Medicaid unless you spend at least 15 minutes with the children. And we need you not only to do that, but to record that you do it.
Yep.
And to keep session notes, because we can't build Medicaid without those session notes. And those conversations haven't happened for 10 years. You know, not at the level of administrator to administrator when you're negotiating contracts. It might happen, you know, provider to administrator, but
yeah.
that should all be in the
I'm not-
contract.
I'm not sure that many of them know that, you know, if you miss a, you know, a session that if it's not made up that week, that, you know, I'll just make it up next week, or I'll make it up, you know, a couple
Yeah.
weeks from now or whatever, you know, and
It doesn't
no,
affect their
no,
reimbursement.
no, you can't.
No,
We
that's the
really like
problem.
that
It doesn't
It
affect their reimbursement.
definitely,
It affects
we
it.
definitely need to make sure that people understand the process full circle. We talked about that on Thursday as well. We already talked about and have already looked at some dates for training. It's difficult because there's a lot of providers when you look at BOCES providers, when you look at our own district providers, when you look at outside agencies. So we have several people, but we talked about that on Thursday and the need for additional training. We talked about opening up the opportunities for training this summer for a lot of folks, because lots of times you get into the heat of the school year, especially September, October, they don't have time.
And those should be mandatory training, shouldn't they not, whether they want to join or not? Or,
Should be a condition.
I mean,
I-
yeah, I mean, that
Goes
should be a
back to
condition.
contract.
We have the most
Yeah.
control over
Yeah.
the people that are on our payroll.
Right,
Yes.
If anybody should be trained up and getting the most reimbursement that they can get back, those should be the people that are on our payroll.
our people,
Yeah.
right,
I mean, and, you know, I don't want to look at those numbers,
I don't either.
you know, but I'm sure someone could look at those numbers and say, this provider that's on our payroll is not providing reimbursable services. And that's a problem.
One question, I have. So is there positions from the IDA that are funded by IDA? Is there positions that we can transfer into the general fund? And then
Does that benefit us?
Yeah, so right now, the psychologists that we have, they do not have the proper license to be able to provide services that are Medicaid reimbursable. So that's why we put the psychologists' salaries in the IDA grant, because we cannot seek Medicaid reimbursement on them. If we were ever to look at hiring different psychologists, or if somebody left and we had to hire new ones, if they're licensed clinical, no, those are social workers. If they have the license so that they can practice outside as well, then we could bill Medicaid, and you're absolutely right. We would most definitely move those salaries into the general fund. Right now, because we can't claim Medicaid on it, we can leave them where they are. The speech pathologist was the other one. We just have a small portion in there. That individual provides evaluations for our preschool age students.
I think I remember our speech pathologist saying that most of them were Medicaid eligible.
Yep, they are, so we don't put those into the IDEA grant. If you look at the one slide that he provided, it was just a small percentage, like, yeah, yeah. But you're right, that's one of the things, as we build these grants, we have to take a really, really close look at what services and what salaries we're building into these grants so that we maximize our revenue. It gets to be quite a card game, it really does.
What's the lifespan of this IDEA grant?
Well, that's a loaded
It's
question.
assumed to be annual,
Yeah,
and that we don't foresee, I mean, it's not anything that any political party wants to take away.
yeah,
Okay.
It's federal funding.
Yeah.
And so what you do see is it may remain stagnant forever
Yeah.
and not get increased, but
Yeah.
that I can't imagine it going away.
So we have some discretion on what we use those funds for.
yes,
Mhm, we do.
we do. Yep, we apply
what's-
each summer.
How do we move current employees that are not Medicaid eligible, reimbursable,
Mhm,
certified or whatever?
mhm.
How do we move them to being certified?
It's difficult, like your psychologist would essentially have to go back and receive additional schooling for that.
Okay.
And sometimes it's worth those changes, sometimes it's not. Going
Right.
back to like what Rich said, if we think the services we get are fantastic and
Sure.
they do great with the kids, it may not be worth the extra money because they're gonna have to go to school, they're gonna have to incur more expense. So there may be an
It could
offsetting
certainly be
expense. Yeah.
a point of negotiation.
Yep, but one
Is
thing we
what I'm-
talked about is, if you'll recall, in our ARP grant, we have social workers in there. That is another key area that we have to look at. Are they licensed clinical social workers or are they just master social workers? Clinical, you can claim Medicaid. Master, you cannot. So those are the things, as we're hiring these new
Sure.
positions, that's something that we'll wanna.
What are you
But we
seeing
should,
though?
we should also consider investing in the people that we're hiring and getting them to a reimbursable point.
Are most school psychologists clinically
No.
certified or not?
Psychologists, I don't see a lot of them.
Okay. So it wouldn't just be our district, then it would be any district that would not be able to claim.
I mean, quite honestly, if you're psychologists, if they're Medicaid eligible, so that we can claim for it, they can practice anywhere and essentially earn a lot more money than they do in schools, is what's really boils down to.
So when you can find one, sometimes the school district hires them part-time because they have their own practice.
Right.
Yeah.
And that way it's for Medicaid
Yeah, so
purposes.
most of them that come through BOCES that we would get through BOCES are not.
Well,
There's there.
So I think what's very helpful and Rich, I very much appreciate, we all appreciate you meeting with everyone. And if nothing else, when you see the increases this year, it's no surprise because there's great attention paid to it. And I think there are more people who are part of that process now. For example, Jenny is now a part of this process and a part of our checks and balances. We have made great improvements throughout our organization. And I think we're all paying attention to this that didn't have the kind of attention that it needed before this project. So thank you for helping to shed the light exactly where it needed to be shown. And whether it was something small or those bigger kinds of processes, if we haven't already implemented that change, we're well on our way. So thank you for your
And
guidance
just
in all
think
of
how
this.
far we would have been if we'd gotten this audit done 5 years ago when we asked about it. And we didn't. Uh-oh.
Well, you can't blame Rich, though.
Thank you, Rich. Yes,
Blame
yes,
you,
yeah.
Dr. Geelan, either, so. Not that I'm playing the blame game or anything like that,
Oh, no.
but just want to
Yeah.
put out there,
Yeah.
the board did have this. And we've been asking for it since I got on board 6 years ago, just saying.
It was
Things
a
are-
great experience
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah, and they're truly headed in the right direction and, you know, we have a fantastic amount of resources in the district that I just don't think we've capitalized in the past and we are now. And we're headed in the right direction.
I mean, I always kind of think in terms of teacher equivalents, which may not be a real fair way to look at it, but I think it costs about $100,000, roughly speaking, round numbers to hire a teacher. So, you know, we've left on the table 5 teachers. And then when, the other thing that, you know, the Medicaid is probably resolving it, I'm glad we're resolving it. But to me, the single most disturbing part of this report is a 0% pass for any kid that is referred to special ed. 0% of kids who are referred to started testing in 8th grade, passed at grade level by 8th grade. That is really something that is stunning. I mean, if that's the main way of intense academic intervention and nobody is being rehabilitated, nobody is getting back on track. And we've left 5 teachers' salary on the table for years. Would we have been better off with 5 new teachers, 5 smaller classrooms, and fewer kids in special ed? You know, I just think the bigger picture is how do you reduce the number of kids that get directed onto this path if the path is not providing the kind of academic rehabilitation that, you know, you want children, young children who are not being successful in school to get before they hit high school. And I don't know how to solve that problem. It's a big problem. Clearly, it wasn't just Olean, it was true for many, many districts. But boy, if the main academic intervention program that is funded by the federal government has a 0% success rate, maybe we should try something else. It's just kind of crazy.
I mean, and I think that, you know, I don't know exactly how, you know, how far behind are the kids who are being referred to special ed? I mean, when we do have such large numbers, like at what point are you at that's where you gotten referred to it? But I mean, we have a lot of opportunities missed. We don't have a very successful summer school program, I don't think, this year. I mean, the majority of your kids lose a lot by not going to school over the summer and not getting, you know, any, that you're gonna regress. And if you have kids who are already behind, regressing, and then those kids that were really far behind last year regress, and then they're the ones who end up in special ed, and then you already have these other kids who were kind of in the middle regressing. I mean, those numbers are, I think they're just gonna get higher, and I'm disappointed that in another year where we really could have used a really great summer school program, we got nothing. I mean, I'm disappointed in where we're headed, so.
We got nothing. Are you talking about this coming up summer?
This current summer, we have a very limited summer school program. I think it's unfortunate. I mean, but you know what, at the same time, I wasn't here a couple years ago when there was 0 summer school program at the elementary school level. I mean, so I think probably for many years, we've been lacking the attention to keeping kids on track year round. I mean,
Well, we've looked at numbers in the past of high school kids that have come to summer school and then go on to not pass Regents exams and not do very well. So we realize that this summer school is an issue.
I mean,
We should probably let
But
these
you-
guys go.
Yeah.
I mean, with 5 salaries though, can't we provide better education year round?
I apologize for interrupting, but if there are no questions for Medicaid, I'll say good evening.
All right, thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
And I would offer that if subsequent to tonight, if you, when you read the report, if you have questions, if you funnel them to Jenny, I'm sure she'll be able to get them to me, and, you know, we certainly will, try to answer any questions you have subsequent to tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. and good night.
Good night.
Right.
All right, are we ready to move on to our list of policies up for review?
So in this discussion, just to be clear on A through E, and E is accounting of fixed assets. These are just, the only changes made are changes in title, and which is the reason why we put on here as a proposal to waive the second reading on those policies, because there isn't anything contentious or there's no change to these policies except to update them to reflect the titles of the people we have in our employ, such as the superintendent of buildings and grounds position no longer exists under civil service. We have the director of facilities. And our business administrator is a business administrator. It was in some places as business official, and we had business manager in one of them. So this is just cleaning up our policies, folks. It's one of the things you asked us to do. So that's A, B, C, D, and E. Look at 5 policies for 1. That's progress. But were there any questions about those title changes?
Is it possible to adopt a resolution just giving, superintendent the authority to update the policies to each,
It'd be nice, but no. I think just as fast might be to, you can take them all together in one rather than moving on each individual policy. You can group them together. The policies 4515, 5120, 5150, 5411, and 5621. When we get there later on, do them all at once. Okay. Let me keep going.
Yep.
Okay. In policy 5684, that's the use of surveillance cameras in the school district and on school buses. We have been using the regulation and in the procedures. What we have not had in place per se is a policy. So this is to put in place a policy that codifies what we have been doing. And it also states the reason for what our surveillance system is all about.
Did it say how long the requirement is?
No, we don't make that public on purpose. Sure. So in our safety plans, and it has been one of those things that has been recommended by the New York State Police Department and anyone who works with you on your school safety plans. So we don't make public some of the intricacies in what we can and can't do with our, both the surveillance cameras and also some of our safety equipment. There's some things that we leave unknown.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with that because I don't think it really is a safety issue to say that you loop your cameras every 72 hours. I mean, I don't quite see the argument, and I do think that the safety argument for it. I mean, there's lots of things I understand the safety arguments for, like you would maybe identify the location of all these cameras, but what that does is it goes back to this whole discretion thing that had become an issue during the code of conduct. When somebody foils security footage and they're told, we don't have it anymore, because, we destroy it, override it in the normal course of business, but we're not willing to tell you when we did have it. That just is a recipe for unhappy constituents. Whereas if you have a record in your policy, every 72 hours or however often you need to, we loop through, record over the tapes, then nobody can say, you just destroyed mine, like it was my kid that was being bullied and I can't get that footage. And now you're telling me that at some unknown time on an unknown schedule, you take over. And it just, I'm not convinced that there is a real security reason not to have that in the policy. And I guess the other thing that worries me about this policy is whatever you record can be hacked. You know, so anything the school has can be on the internet. And, you know, that's a scary thought to me. We're reporting all these kids with sufficient detail that you can identify them.
So I recall when we were going through with our massive security and cameras back in the day when we used to start all this, we did discuss having security technicians or video technicians along those lines as a full-time position. But
There's not gonna stop happening.
no, but it's somebody that, it's a separate position that would be needed.
I don't know if that position is needed, but I just think, again, that was a reality that a decade ago wasn't so much of a problem.
If you're gonna create a policy that, okay, well, so we're all gonna keep the video for 72 hours and then run
Well,
over it.
I'm not saying it's 72
I'm
hours,
just
I'm just
saying,
saying whatever it is, it's gotta be, they can't just keep them indefinitely.
But you have to have somebody that's gonna
Well,
constantly.
it must be doing it right now.
Yeah, so
They're
just,
not keeping
if
it
I could
forever.
interject, just one thought too is, there may not be a magic number for any of it, hours, days, weeks, months, because each camera may be different. If you have a camera that has a lot of activity on it, an outdoor camera that's catching a lot, that one may not, that has a lot more data on it and may not be able to go as long as hypothetically, say, a bus camera. You may have two buses that have vastly different capacity because one bus is operating 6 hours a day and can only feed for, I
Yes,
don't know.
so part of what she's speaking to, and I want to remind everyone, this is under advice of counsel. It's not anything that we've just made up. Secondly, there has been an involvement, and this is one of the reasons why you don't say exactly how much time, because it's different from camera to camera. Part of the involvement that's happened with the technology is the cameras are not always on, which is what Jenny is saying, that they're triggered by movement. And so let's say there is hypothetically a camera in a building right now that's closed and there's nobody in there moving around. The camera will not go back on again until there's movement in that hallway or in front of that camera, wherever it is. So to say how long that one camera is, or how much is going to be able to be stored from that one camera, it's very different. And the technology on what's in a camera and what's being stored through the programs, if you don't set a time, one of the things that council has told us is then you're not setting that expectation. Because remember, the school district owns it. It does not belong to anybody else. So there shouldn't be an expectation that they would be able to retrieve or use the footage for any particular reason. And that's, I'm talking about in general, and in general, they're not, because these are cameras that are used for the use of, as we've been saying in this policy, the way that it's stated.
But it's spoilable, right?
No, it's not always spoilable, because here's the thing. If there is another student on it, we can't give it to anybody if there's another student who's on that video because of FERPA. So no, video footage is very different from other records that someone cannot just have it. And so we'll often have to have that conversation with someone who wants to come in and see something. If we don't either have the technology through a program to blur out everyone else, or what I've done very crudely sometimes in the past is to get a piece of paper and cover the screen so no one else is visible, then you can watch it in the presence of an administrator, but it's not anything that you're going to receive. The only time that would happen is under subpoena. And that would only be done with the direction and under advice of counsel on that particular footage as well. It's not done very often.
Who has the means to get rid of the surveillance, like the cameras? Can any one of our administrators go in and
No,
erase it, or-
no.
and
They don't have that ability. The ability of a user, and the users that we designate are normally mostly administrators. They're not able to do any manipulation except viewing. So you can view it, you can speed it up, slow it down, you can change angles, you can, there are various things that you can do, but not to delete it. Those records cannot be deleted by the user.
Who does?
We don't actually delete it.
They're just
They're not
overwritten
deleted.
due to space.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to pull off what we need, for instance. To the extent that any video images create student or personnel records, we have the ability to pull those and save those as far as the
Correct.
records go.
Mhm.
As long as we do it before it's overwritten.
Right.
So is there any way in this policy for these purposes that we can state how long we keep those that video recording?
In that case, it would come under the FERPA, right?
Does anybody know how long it is off? Not maybe not offhand, but just because like if I see something happen in school, a video recording. And say somebody wants to know what happened, and that video is present, we take that off to create a student record. How long do we have to keep that, so said parent or whoever can come back and say that the video before this time is up, so that doesn't get destroyed, you know what I'm saying?
Retention.
Yeah, there is a retention schedule for everything, and with disciplinary, I believe it's up until 1 year after that student graduates from high school.
And then personnel records are
Thank you.
forever, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Essentially. forever.
I know at operations, we discussed this part about the audio recordings.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it says audio recordings will not be utilized by the district officials. However, the prohibition may not preclude the use of audio recordings by law enforcement. So we are audio recording.
And some cameras.
So,
You can't go according. to
but
the
at
law.
those cameras, don't we have to have, do we have things posted?
We do
saying-
have them all posted. Those are the
So every
ones on the
camera that is
buses.
audio recording.
But
Yeah. So
doesn't
are we
that-
only audio recording on buses?
Yes.
But doesn't that policy just say we can't, the school district can't, only law enforcement can make an audio recording?
It says that we wouldn't prohibit them from using them, from using audio, but we wouldn't use the audio for anything.
What is it, does it say you can't actually record?
No.
No, it says audio recordings will not be utilized by the district officials. It doesn't say we're not audio recording. It's just saying we won't use an audio recording. So I don't even know why we would be doing it though, if we're not gonna use
Can't
it. Because if something happens on a bus and somebody says, well, this kid said this and that kid said that and blah, blah, blah. And we have the audio recording and we could go back and we could listen to it, but we're not gonna, why would we do it at all?
Our regulations that we provide to the parents regarding transportation does indicate that audio recording.
But then you can't, but I mean. it's-
But
it's a
why if
bizarre
we're not
thing.
gonna
If you
use
can't
it?
Use them, then
If
why?
we
make
can't
them?
use it, why would we even why would we do it? Because in our policy, we're saying, we're not gonna use it to do anything, we're not gonna do anything with it, so it won't be used for any form of disciplinary action or anything, because we're not gonna use it. But if a law enforcement official asks to use it, they can have the audio and they can have,
Yeah, so why are we?
so
putting
why
this-
are we even,
Why are we handcuffing ourselves with this policy about audio recording?
Well,
Why
I
would
would
we
we
just-
allowed to use, I mean, I think it's a matter of law, that's why I think that, I mean, this policy is based on New York law.
It is, and there was a concern when cameras were first put into use, that they would be used for evaluative purposes. And that would be used in a disciplinary action against an employee based on what they said. That's my guess of where it came from.
Mhm.
Do better than that.
There's just general law in New York about you can't record people without both sides knowing that the recording is being made. You know, it's just, and I think this is one example of that, and that's why you give notice to parents, but then again, if the temptation to use it, if you have it, is almost impossible not to, I mean, I just can't believe that have a recording and nobody would ever listen to it. I think that if you have a recording, people do listen to it, and so you shouldn't have the recordings. If you can't use them, don't make them. I mean, how many times do we refer, which just comes back to the pins? I mean, the number of times a police officer would ask for what happened on a bus has got to be de minimis, if ever. The people that ask what happened on the bus are the parents and the teachers.
Or the
you know,
person that is trying to execute the code of conduct and find out what,
or the administrator.
Yeah.
So.
But if you're not gonna use it, I mean, and I understand, like, if we're telling people that, you know, I mean, if the law says you have to tell people they're being audio recorded and you're audio recording them and you've told them, then why would you bother audio recording
I
if you
think-
don't intend to possibly?
I think
use
what
it?
we're missing is, it's not necessarily that the surveillance camera has the audio capability. That another reading of this is that it's just audio recordings in and of themselves, like a hidden tape recorder will not be utilized by district officials. That it's, we're looking at this as being connected to the surveillance camera, but it's that audio recordings will not be utilized by district officials.
I think that's such a nuanced reading. I mean, whether or not the recorder is in the camera or a separate device can make no legal difference. And just because we have sophisticated cameras that where you can put the recorder within the little tiny camera. and
Right.
Couldn't, I mean,
I mean, and I think
that's
that,
not, that's a distinction without it.
I think that would be a different policy if you're saying like, we won't audio record people, because this specific policy is specific to surveillance cameras in the school district and on school buses. And so it's specific to a audio recording involving the use of a camera.
So
Not
do we
like
have
I
to
walked
have audio
into, you know,
recordings? I think never-
a principal's office and he had a hidden recorder there. I mean, this is specific to like, there's a camera and an audio.
Right.
Audio recordings off on our surveillance cameras? I don't know, I'm just asking. Do we?
I don't know.
Okay.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
If we,
Can you turn the audio capacity off?
We actually don't have mics on our cameras.
They're.
No, we're talking about the bus ones.
How about the ones in the buses?
I don't know,
They
I'll
do.
be honest, I mean. They specifically make them with audio recording on the
You know,
buses.
I'm gonna have to get clarification, because now that I'm looking at this the other way, I'm not sure that they didn't just mean audio recordings in and of themselves. I really don't know. So what is the problem with audio recordings as it says in?
all right, any other concerns about that policy? We're gonna look at this again. All right, any other concerns about this policy? We're gonna go and move on to the next one. All right, next up is smoking, tobacco and cannabis use.
How about that non-
Well, fine, we'll go back to the non-discrimination and, you know. All right. Non-discrimination.
That, the revisions were not marked. I could not tell that. Not that I think there's anything wrong with it.
Oh,
I think it's just.
the tracked version.
This was the only one, there was not a,
Because we didn't have this policy.
No, we did have this policy, 3420 version.
on a policy, the BOCES policy, plus there was not a marked up version, it was just.
That's right. Because of the changes they had made, they did not have a tracked version of it.
But 3420 is an existing.
Yes, it
policy.
is. It is.
So we don't know how this policy differs from the policy we have. It can't be that different, because I'm pretty familiar with it.
It's not substantially. It is updated to include all the classes that had been updated since the last time, because what was the date of our last one? It had been a while. I don't remember offhand what the date was. But in, was it in 2020, when they had the recommended changes to the Title IX policy, they also had the changes to this one. And then we did not update this one to reflect those changes.
It just seems to me if you pay for a policy service, they should show you what revisions would be on that. Not much to ask, but show, see what revenue, they must have them. They didn't start this from scratch either. They started from the 2016-17 version of 3420 that they disseminated. And then they made revisions. It seems like, you know, to be a fair ask, to say, show us the revisions.
Understood.
I think we can do a comparison in the next reading. Find out what the differences are. Is there anything content related anybody wants to discuss at this point? All right, should we move on to the next one? The next one we've got is the smoking, tobacco, and cannabis use. Any discussion on that one?
To include vaping. Okay.
Smoking, vaping, using tobacco products and or using or ingesting.
All right,
This particular policy is for everybody, correct?
There's one for students. one for
Yes.
staff.
Is it, but this particular policy is for
The
the
first-
entire
The world,
community.
yes.
Yeah, everybody's, right?
What's prohibited on our school grounds and school
Mhm.
functions.
Outside groups, everybody.
But we only prohibit it property. Do we have
As opposed to, what do you mean?
What are you
do we have a
talking-
separate drug use policy that's separate from this? An additional one?
For students or staff?
Well,
Those next two, right?
Yep.
all right, any questions on that one? We're on to the next one. The next one, alcohol, tobacco, and other substance abuse by staff.
It's a great segue into this one.
What's the major, what's the revision?
Yeah.
Are we just adding in
The cannabis.
Cannabis.
Okay.
And also the reference to policy 5640 and the change in the name of 5640.
Anything on that one? We'll move to the next one.
We made sure in the code of conduct that it did reflect the same verbiage.
Good.
We also designated our individuals in the district for getting that information as our school nurses and school guidance counselors.
All right, nothing on that one. We can move to the audit committee. Second reading of that one.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Sure.
I shall be back. 18. Over is the law for smoking. We have students that are that age sometimes.
Sure.
But they can't have it on
They
property.
just can't have a copy.
Okay. Now the audit committee. This is a second reading.
I do have one other, sorry,
Yep.
on the
Back to the other
student related one.
All right.
It really adds a lot. I mean, vitamins, supplements, herbs. There's a whole lot of extra things in this one that are not in the other one. Why? I mean, there's a lot of extra stuff in here.
It doesn't include energy drinks or something, or does it?
I don't know,
No.
I mean, an energy drink could be a supplement, right? I don't know.
Like, that would go along with like a
No.
vitamin or a supplement.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a supplement, a vitamin and an herb. I mean, I don't, there's just, I mean, there's just a lot of extra stuff that they can't have.
Take those
Well,
vitamins.
it kind of goes back to the conversation we had earlier about the code of conduct. Is being very clear about what students are not allowed to have. So let's say about like the over-the-counter drugs. It's different between staff and students on having over-the-counter drugs in school. They're not to have them at all. And a student, you know, as we all know, you're supposed to have that. It comes in with a note, goes to the nurse, and the nurse can dispense it only. Can't have anything else on them. And so that's different as opposed to our staff members. Right, being able to have, let's say, a Tylenol in their purse or something like that. It's,
It's referencing the misuse of those.
right.
I mean, so can they have them? I mean, if you're not misusing, what is misuse? Are you allowed to take your vitamins at school?
Like
I
they're
mean,
not supposed
if you
to.
think about it, like most of my
No.
vitamins need to be eaten with food or taken with food. So I
Technically, they're
take
not
them at lunch when I eat
supposed to.
my first meal of the day.
Yeah, so you probably shouldn't really have anything in school.
I mean,
Part
but are you
of the,
misusing it because you're taking it?
Just
From
go
the
down to the
school
nurse, I guess,
side,
maybe, and
yeah.
take it at lunchtime, go down if you are.
Or it's something we know about if it's in the case of a vitamin and the vitamin isn't something that the child has in the morning. That in the classroom, but it's all done with that understanding and you have documentation for it.
For self-administration of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with the other drugs and prescription drugs that a student has that has been prescribed to that student and under the orders of the doctor. So it's not that the student can never have that in school at all. It's just under those very strict guidelines.
What if cannabis marijuana is used as a medical?
That is one of the differences of having this in the policy and in any of the trainings or legal. In fact, I think you went to one not too long ago. That they stressed that you should update your policy to say this because absent that, then you can get into issues.
All right, audit committee, second reading.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or, no.
Second reading.
Yeah, no, it's under the article. She met with you. She were not on a committee may attend such meetings. Meetings as an observer if the committee is under New York law and regulations. board members shall not actively participate in substantive discussions or cast votes during any meeting unless they're also members of the committee. Can we just remove that unless they're also members of the committee, or because technically there shouldn't be any votes being taken in the committee meeting that's not a board.
We really don't vote, we make recommendations.
I mean,
Both things should be just.
I just thought sometimes informally on committees, and I don't think they're binding votes really, but every so often, the chair will say, how does the committee feel about that? Is there, you know, and it just.
Does everybody agree it should
Yeah,
go,
I mean-
it should move forward, or, you know,
So it
something
is
like that?
conceivable that that would be interpreted as a vote. It's not a binding
It's a
vote, it's certainly not a vote on the board. And I mean, I don't want to wordsmith this. I just thought the way committee meetings are pretty flowing, and it's not absolutely impossible that a chair might ask for a vote. And then you don't want to have the people that are there who are not on the committee
Yes.
casting votes. That's all.
They shouldn't-
I'm not
they shouldn't be
suggesting you
casting
take-
anyway.
Well, I understand, but I mean, I'm just trying to address Julio's concern, which is to say, why address it if committees never take votes? Well, I don't think it is absolutely impossible that committee would never take. But I think that it should be prohibited that non-committee members vote if there was that situation where a committee chair asked for a vote. Even if it's just an informal, just a decision making.
I agree.
procedure,
Yeah.
one-on-one.
That's how I kind of look at it as, we were making the idea that no discussions. And then if, you know, if you're asked, what do you think about that? Should that move forward? Is there further, you know, that may not actually be casting a vote, but you're asking us to weigh in as a
Deliberative.
yes, each of us, so.
In that committee, it happens when we're talking about where we might be setting the tax levy.
Right.
And, you know, it's what, and it was one of those things that in this past year at that committee level, we did, because we discussed various numbers, and then you really want to have the input of everyone around the table on tolerances and
Yeah.
where we think we need to go. And you could consider that as casting a vote.
It kind of is, actually.
It can be used, it's not a binding vote that becomes a resolution per se that we would do here at the board level. But at the committee level, it is an important tool sometimes of committee management.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that we just want to make it clear that, you know, unless you're a member of it, you're not.
I
gonna
just-
weigh in on it.
Just as long as it's not like.
No, no one's making a decision for the entire board.
That's.
No, I think we want to be clear that
That's not.
if there's a fifth member in the room, that this is no way a board vote.
Right,
Right.
right, yes.
We want to be explicit about that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Pretty good.
All right. On to the last one. Sexual harassment in the workplace is the third reading.
One of 911 is a long policy. You see that?
11 pages long. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie. I didn't think that would make sense.
Oh,
I think I only read
It's
11
11.
pages.
It used to be 9.
Right, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. We'll fix it. It's funny how many times have I looked at it and I just caught that now.
So what are we talking about?
Just up at the
Page
top
numbers.
of 6121, where it's page 1 of 911.
And Julio and I were just discussing the
Yes,
first
ma'am.
paragraph's got a couple grammatical spelling errors in it. I'm sure we'll fix those before we do that, something about me, and you don't even know what that's.
Hmm.
Personnel in the second paragraph.
No, maintaining. In the first sentence.
I'm gonna start third time through it, but, and it is, you know, if we want that to be a capital, I don't even know what that is. And hyphen, capital, hyphen.
Well, we're getting rid of the and, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's gonna be just-
sentence.
Yeah, it is.
Originally it's just one component, okay.
All right, anything else?
I know.
Sorry.
That one was mine.
It's fine.
On page 2,
Yes.
the word it is bolded for some reason. In the first paragraph, in the middle.
Yeah.
You're missing this, the even page.
Only on this copy, I've got a copy back at the room.
Sandra, on this, on page 2, you said the first paragraph.
First paragraph in the middle. On my screen, it's bold.
Oh, right here, I see
Yeah,
it.
okay,
It. Counts out.
yeah. Too much passes on that word.
So red is coming.
Red's.
Red is out,
Sorry.
blue is
Somebody-
in.
Some of them didn't have the red, so that's why I was getting confused there when I was looking at it, okay.
The red or striped.
I'll put that.
Nice
I
iPad.
didn't understand.
Yeah,
Mhm.
probably didn't. 'Cause I didn't
It's
see
handy,
that.
so I don't have to have.
I know.
Yeah.
Printed copy.
Wow.
Bottom of the light years.
It's hard.
I was fooled. I
Like
thought
you're
it was
just
gonna be
going
a quick
to
meeting.
your
I read
phone.
6:30 to 8.
The iPads are handy, except at the same time, I'm a writer. So when I go through these and I write my questions down, now I'm trying to write questions on separate pieces of paper
Oh, I
and then
see.
remember what they went to.
No, she hasn't caught up with you yet. Someday.
I need to be able to mark up this myself.
Keeping your own marked up copies.
Yeah. Well, because then I can't remember what I asked you to change to go back to see if you changed it.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on this one? Speak now or speak later.
Your 9 is. red.
My 9 is red, that's why. Yeah.
Of course,
The
the
9
9
is
is going
being-
away.
Out.
I withdraw
You need a
all
color
no
printer.
comments.
You need a color printer. That's what you need.
So,
All right, ready to move on? All right, good news. We covered public comments already. We're moving on to committee reports. Which are in there. Any discussion on any of those? We're gonna run through them real quick. Safety Committee, Operations Committee, Audit and Finance Committee, Buildings and Grounds Committee, the minutes were attached. Anybody have any discussion on any of those?
And one for building and grounds, so they did testing in the soil, obviously, we're gonna have to take the necessary precautions and go through. And can you wanna handle that for the next 45 seconds there, Doctor? or you wanna-
Not really.
Okay.
Not
Well,
more than
bottom line
saying.
is we gotta take out a layer of dirt. Put a layer on it, and get rid of the somewhat contaminated high level of contamination in the soil to rectify it so that we can actually put on a turf field. So it's gonna take additional funding and out of our reserve fund as well.
So we don't have anything that rises to the level of being what's considered hazardous.
Which is good.
So it's important to say that, especially now. And that we have, that we're working with some experts in the field too, to help us figure out exactly how much and what do we have to do with it and what are our options. And so we're in very good hands. That's the one nice thing to say about it. My greatest and most up-to-date update is I had some interaction with the attorney who's in charge of all of this today. And there's some, I guess there's some information that he has to share with us that I expect in the next couple of days.
Is that good?
So that's good. I think whenever they're at a point where they have some information to share with us, that is good news. That means that some of the other people were already talking, and maybe we'll have some definitive answers to know, what we're doing next this summer.
The good news is some of it will probably be recycled, so it'll be cost savings as
Yeah.
well. So we'll find out all the details sometime in the summer regarding that.
Mhm.
I'll just leave it at that.
Well, are you able to tell us like where we are at with the capital improvement project as far as our music rooms and in the auditorium, and what the timeline is and what's getting done first and what's not getting, and how long we expect it to be? Do we know any of those kind of questions?
It's good.
We do, and it's all on, okay, part of this is gonna be in my report.
Oh, okay, good.
But that's okay.
Thank you. No, that's
No,
good.
we do have, we have a list that's going to get updated. We can't have it in real time because of the software program that our construction management group is using.
Okay.
But they do have a PDF of it right now. Oops, stop. That they'll be updating that regularly with the bi-weekly meetings that we have with them.
Okay,
And as of right now, we have begun.
we have.
We have.
Yeah.
And they're all set up. As soon as kids and teachers moved out, they moved in.
Okay, good.
And we're doing everything as quickly as we can. I just to set your expectations, don't get them too high on where we thought we would be because of supply chain issues. That, part of this is making sure that we get all of our supplies in our various construction groups are having a hard time with some supplies, or they'll get everything except one necessary component. And then we're working with them on storage and how do you deal with this and staging areas. And so I have to say, good for you for having a construction management group and not being your own construction manager on a project this large.
Right.
That if these kinds of issues that you couldn't foresee a few years ago would be a complete nightmare for anyone working within the district to take on this yourselves.
I do believe we're gonna keep updates
Right.
on web 2 and our website too.
Yeah.
On a monthly basis?
Oh, no, probably more often than that.
Okay, well, let's do that.
Yeah. And we've got a construction page and we'll have pictures on there too. And the pictures will be uploaded regularly so everyone can see what's going on inside because we won't be able to go in and look at everything.
Washington West is really empty and kudos and
Oh,
huge accolades to everybody at Washington West because we anticipated 2 days for the movers to come in there and move everything, and they did such a good job beforehand that the movers were done and out in a day.
Oh, nice.
They did a fantastic job. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but they did amazing.
Okay, that's great.
mostly
I'm-
sweat and tears.
Yes.
Just saying.
I'm just concerned about, our auditorium because we do so many things in our auditorium. That, we're not gonna be able to use our auditorium. And
Not this summer.
said this, I know, but I mean, probably not a lot of the year. And so, I just want to have plans in place when we have a supply chain problem.
We've
that we're not
engaged those
waiting to the
people.
last minute because we do so much in our auditorium.
Yep.
And for some of us, like this is our kids' last years in this school. So, I'm personally concerned because I want to be able to someday use that maybe sometime this year. So, but we may not. So I just want to make sure we've got some plans in place.
There are contingency plans being
Okay.
put in place right now because everyone knows it's supposed to be done, I believe, by the end of December, going off my head. But if for some reason it's not, we already have some contingencies about some of those other concerts and where are we gonna have
Plays,
them in
musicals.
place. Absolutely.
Everything that we do.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlo.
Since Ira's not here, I actually had something to say about the minutes for the operations meeting. On the second page of the minutes, it talks about us talking about start time revisions and discussing, it just says discussing moving time back 20 minutes. I think it would be important to put in there that we did also discuss that that's not a board decision, that it won't be a board vote moving back that time. And that was an administrative decision only. Because we did ask that question if we'd be getting to vote on that change, and we were told no. So I think putting that in there would be important, because I think that when that change happens, a lot of people are gonna think that we made the change, and it's important to note that we did not. Administrators.
We just set policy. And hire superintendents. And offer.
The superintendent is an administrator.
Yeah.
But yes, so I think that that's important to have on there. And then additionally,
That's helpful too, because we got into some topics that go beyond the scope of the committee. Agreed.
and that was the other thing, I think we also talked about adding an additional committee, the curriculum committee.
Mhm.
And I think we talked about that, and I don't see that on here in these minutes. So I think adding that to these minutes, I don't remember our full discussion on it, but we did talk about separating the two committees. I think putting that on there.
Did
is
we talk
important.
about that at the last meeting, or did we talk about, I think it was 2 meetings.
I thought we talked about it in both. but
So I
could be
believe it
wrong.
was brought up at the very beginning when we were going over
The chart.
right, and the purpose of the committee, and someone raised the question, and that's how it was addressed.
Yeah,
But
that the operations committee does.
we can add that in.
That perhaps we need to.
Well, it'll be a board vote probably in our first meeting or the second meeting, we'll come back and the president has to decide who's gonna be the chair. And obviously, if we're going to create a new committee, somebody's gonna have to chair that committee. So I would presume it's going to be the next meeting.
It's on the agenda.
Okay.
Would the curriculum committee be like a subcommittee?
No, it'll be a separate committee.
It'll be, yeah.
It really is a division. It's too much for that one committee to
Usually
take
we
on.
consolidate committees and we've gone, not just subcommittees, but we did have a lot more and then we shrunk them down. Now we're expanding again, so.
Well.
That's out of necessity.
The operations is
Yeah,
just too much.
Somebody, there's somebody over here who doesn't like all of these committees. And I had to actually agree with the fact that operations is trying to take on an awful lot. And that we never get to talking about any curriculum or doing anything.
It's conspicuously absent from our committee
Yeah.
structure.
So it's probably, if what we want to do is, and we do want to do that, we probably need a committee to do that. Thanks, Kelly, though,
All
for
right, yeah.
talking about that. It's a little time thing.
All right, we'll move on to the board report. I do not have a lot, but I will say that it's been a very busy year and this is the last, meeting of the year. So great work, everyone. We've had some changes. We've got a new superintendent coming in. We've had an interim superintendent. Made it through COVID as far as it's come.
We got the fall coming, don't forget.
We had a wonderful graduation back in the auditorium. That went well. And also, we would like to present this plaque to Janine for her time on the board and for contributing all the the wonderful input on all the policies especially. We can't thank you enough for all that.
Are you going over there? Then I'll go over
Well, How
here.
about we go over here? Let me present this to you. Maybe, how about this area?
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Two of these, some bigger, some smaller. Then I'll do what my daughter always says, don't do. I'll do one like this. Yay.
Yes, always listen to the real technical.
Here, do you want this?
Yeah.
All right, all right. We can move on to the superintendent's
You
report.
had some very good stuff.
And you gave a great speech.
Thank
I
you.
did listen in.
All right. Try to make it quick because, the kids don't want to listen to me.
Well, we'll put this, your speeches.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, it was an honor and a privilege to participate in so many of the activities. The Avenue of Graduates was so enjoyable. Thank you for having excellent weather that day. Walking up and down the street, I chose to do that instead of driving so I could stop and talk to families and talk to children. And for a little while, I almost felt like I was running for office or something, and just all the handshaking, and all the smiling. It was a perma smile that I had after that event. It was absolutely uplifting. Really, really was. I enjoyed that. And then we also talked about, how could we do this better? Because we do that at every single event. And the academic wall of honor we were a little worried at first, and I know there were some concerns on, well, should we really do this the night before graduation? And then the thought was, well, we'll be all decorated. This will be nice. And but graduation's so big. And then I don't know, this might be too much. Well, I don't know if it was too much for them. Our buildings and grounds crew did a fabulous job. And it looked so spiffy for our academic wall of honor to be so decked out with flowers everywhere. And it just, the people who came in from out of town, it took this to a higher level of importance and feeling truly honored. I think it was stronger being connected with commencement. And that was a wonderful, wonderful event. The Athletic Wall of Fame, that was a lot of fun too. I really enjoyed that. Hearing the stories and hearing everybody all the recipients have a chance to speak. There's no way you could leave that room and not feel that athletics was such an important role in our whole academic program. When you heard about how it affected their lives, especially in terms of the common themes were learning about myself and the teamwork and that feeling of being part of a family. You just heard those same themes over and over again, and how the coach helped me get to know myself. To me, those are powerful words, especially as an educator, to hear that. It was fabulous. Commencement itself was just such a joy. And so my thanks to everybody who was a part of it. We did send something out to get some feedback that we wanted to get on the 20-minute shift earlier in the day. And also provided some information behind it ahead of time on what was that justification? Why are we even thinking about this? And we tried really hard to have the message answer those questions that someone would be asking when they first started hearing about it. And change is never easy, but it's also, if we do make a change, and I'm saying if we do make a change, we want to make it for all the right reasons. But I do want to report back to you that at the close of this, we had, and most of the way through, it was basically a 2-to-1. So we had 278 support shifting the school time. 145 did not support shifting the school time, and 36 voted in that they had no opinion or it didn't matter to them. So there were 459 respondents altogether, which it's pretty good. They say there are various numbers thrown around, but sometimes they'll say that a return rate of 14%, if you get that, then it's considered high. it is a very busy time of year. And I do want to say, though, that I was stopped out in the community by a few different parents who asked for a little bit more information. And then, and I think if nothing else, they appreciate the conversation being asked. But where we end up going with this, I think we have to make a determination fairly soon and talk about, you know, where we end up. So we know what will happen if we don't do anything. And I have heard also that the high school is particularly concerned because if we don't make a change to the time, we're going to have to tell a lot of kids and families that you can't come here so early in the morning. There was a concern that was brought up earlier in the meeting in our comments about Project Lead the Way. And what I'm not so sure about, and I do have a note to go back and discuss it, is how we might be able to accommodate Project Lead the Way during the school day. And before, there was a concern about our kids taking a lot of classes, but there was also an understanding that we had some students from other schools participating and it was easier for them to participate. We're going to have to, like, no decision is perfect. We know that. You guys make hard decisions all the time. But when we are making those decisions, I would just say that I think we should first and foremost make the decision based upon only Ann City School District students and not just do something for the convenience of students attending from another school, because it doesn't mean they can't. Even if it was first period of the day, might that still be something that could accommodate the couple of kids who are from another school district? So we'll be looking into that to find out. I'm sure that was one of the questions resonating in your head when you heard the comment earlier today. So
Might also be possible to remotely attend.
yes, we also participate in the long distance learning lab, right? We just signed that the other day. So that's the reason why I say that. That has happened for years in this area. We had when there was a teacher over at Portville teaching Chinese.
Yep.
You know, for example. Okay. Oh, there it is. So gearing up for summer school, that's starting on July 11th. And we do have some enrichment programs as well as remedial programs are slated to begin on that day. And when I say enrichment, that's also including some of our arts. We have a music teacher, we have an art teacher in the elementary grouping. And I believe we ended up that all of our positions were filled, but I'm not 100% sure about our nursing position, if we got that one filled or not.
Is it one class per grade in the elementary level? Is that, I mean, is that what's happening in summer school? That's what it was last year.
I think so, but I don't know. I don't know if it was one or two.
I believe it was like 30 kids per grade.
Okay, well, that sounds like two.
It might be 2 classes. but
I have a feeling it's two, but I'm not going to say for sure. I can find out.
It was, I believe
Maybe
I
one
believe it was
class.
the lowest 30 each grade were invited to be in summer school. So whether or not that the classes are actually filled or not.
That's right. I have it in my summer school stuff, but I don't have my summer school stuff yet. So one thing that we should discuss is, was just passed out to you. When we were talking about cyber coverage before, you knew that the coverage that we currently have, we can't have anymore. They're dropping us. We looked at different options. And Jenny told us that Utica National was working on it. Well, they got the information back to us. So now we have both the Utica National Cyber Suite coverage and Cowbell, which is the other one that we've been talking about. And so there are differences between them, and there's differences not only in the deductibles, but it's also in the coverage and when something happens. What are we calling that? The ransom, that's
Yeah.
right.
The ransom coverage.
Is there no coverage from ransom under?
There is none under Utica. There is none under Utica. under cowbell, the ransom coverage is 500,000. And they also provide a $50,000 to cover resources for remediation. And then that, Utica does not have anything.
Yeah, I mean, that, the rationale for that is the ransomware, those who are demanding ransom find out if you have insurance. And they demand ransom at the insurance limit. Because. it's
And they
that-
change it according to it, don't they? I've heard that
Yeah, if
too.
you have a lot of insurance, they demand a high amount. If you
Mhm.
don't have much insurance, they negotiate lower. At least that's one of the theories that's out there, which is why insurance companies are pushing back against providing a lot of ransomware coverage. On the other hand, having none is a little risky because at some point, the cost of the ransom, paying the ransom is less than the cost of renovating your system, you know, and that's why people pay ransom, because they've got to get their data back in a timely manner. And it's the cheapest way to get your data back. So if you have no coverage at all, then every dollar that you spend to actually pay a ransom, because it is unfortunately the economically rational thing to do, comes out of, you know, your general fund as opposed to, you know, that, you know, there's a pretty big difference in premium there, and I'm sure that's why the risk, the ransomware risk will probably, I mean, it's probably your second highest risk. Your highest risk is that there's any kind of data breach, negligence or theft, it doesn't matter. If you lose people's records, and you might have, and then you got to notify them. And that's an extremely expensive thing to do for a school, because there's so many people.
And the loss of business, there's a big difference too between $500,000 and $1 million.
So Utica National Coverage, we have that, we purchase that every year. So the cowbell would be supplemental in addition to what we have, so we know we're getting the Utica coverage. They did put feelers out, they did request quotes from other companies, Beasley was one of them. Unfortunately, a lot of them won't touch schools because we don't have the multi-factor authentication for email systems, which is pretty common, you know, with schools in New York State, not to have that. And a lot of them unfortunately are just getting out of it. But cowbell did provide this quote back to us.
That would be supplemental.
It'll be in addition to, yeah, so we have, Utica provides this option for all schools.
Of your coverage.
Yeah.
It's not an additional thing, it's just part of our.
No, it's totally additional, so cowbell is a standalone policy
Yeah,
that we would.
but I mean,
purchase.
Utica is just.
Utica is
We
built
carry
in.
Utica no
Yeah.
matter what, and
Yep.
this is not an addition to Utica, it's just part of Utica's.
Nope, it's totally in addition to.
Oh, it is an
Cowbell
addition.
is, Yeah.
No, I get it.
Cowbell.
So Utica, the reason that's a $2,000 approximate is because
Okay,
it's
that's
already
okay.
built in, and we're just trying to piece it out.
So you have the option, so
Right.
districts have the option of even purchasing that Utica coverage,
Mhm.
we purchase that.
Oh, okay. That's
So
what I
you
was
don't
trying to get.
have to purchase it, we choose to.
Okay,
And then cowbell would be another policy that we would purchase.
with the additional premium that's down.
Correct, correct. $8,187 for that,
To cover, to bump us up on,
to get the
Limits.
limits, yeah.
to get higher
It
limits.
sounds to me though, what you want is an umbrella over the Utica. I mean,
That's what I was.
to
wondering,
buy a
is that-
second full standalone policy, there's gonna be, you're just gonna create fights between the insurers, who's the primary. Can you get an umbrella from, like that is, then it would be clear Utica gets first, and when the Utica limits are expired, if they ever do, if they're reached.
Then this
then
would
the
be,
umbrella
this
gets
would jump in.
So the way the insurance agent was explaining to me that we actually don't want Utica to be hit first. We actually want the other one to be hit first because cowbell stands separate and it's just the cowbell policy. If it were to go hit Utica, Utica is our entire
premium would
policy.
go up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha,
Yeah.
okay, now I understand.
But then you have to specify, I mean, the companies themselves are both gonna claim the other one is primary and they're second. I mean,
I think it specifies that the cowbell one has to go primary. I'll clarify with Randy on that. Randy
Then
is,
might not want to get the 2,000 endorsement, unless it's too late. I'm not sure you can vote.
I'll clarify with Randy on that. But my understanding is that cowbell would be completely primary on it. But I can clarify.
Okay, is that something we need to move on tonight? This.
It expires at the end.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that you guys have to act on it or anything like that, but it does expire, so I mean, I can move forward with it.
Yeah.
We're trying to just get a sense of what's the thought? Do we agree that we should move forward with it? Are we comfortable with just what we have with Utica? Keep in mind, the policy that we currently have through at Bay is much larger. We're talking a $3 million aggregate limit, so we're not gonna get that level of
Oh,
coverage.
gotcha.
We're just not going to. So it's a reduction from what we have right now, but it's still more than what we're buying through Utica.
How much was at Bay?
At Bay was closer to 14,000 and change.
We always got this and we bought this for that.
We're still gonna buy
We're
this
still
because
gonna
I
do
think for $2,000,
It's good just
it's
to
good
have.
to have
Okay,
it.
and then we had the additional at Bay, which was about 14,000, but gave us more
Yep,
coverage.
Yep.
This one is kind of meets us in the middle, and the guy gets kind of meets us in the middle in price as well.
correct.
So I don't know.
Correct.
I guess if you're asking me what I think, I would say probably go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yes, I mean, now that I see what we've been doing and where we're at, and yay for finding.
Yeah, it was
Something,
a challenge.
yeah.
So Utica is looking additionally at boosting up their coverage. They've had some huge surveys out lately and we've had to provide a lot of information. So I think you're going to see them start to provide more. I don't anticipate seeing it before next July.
Okay, well then
So I think we do the cowbell.
I think we go with that.
I think we should,
Cowbell, which
yeah.
I can't think that name hardly. but
I know, who comes up with these things?
I don't know.
It's an ice cream
Well,
company or what?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Cowbell offers is, and this is becoming increasingly common with these standalone cyber policies, is that they have some kind of agenda on top of, or at least an appraisal or evaluation of your cybersecurity condition as part of your policy. So it's like, like employment practices will sometimes have trainings,
Yeah.
they have Cowbell, and that's where the name comes from. It's like a warning, it kind of gives, they claim to have software that helps you to appraise the state of your cybersecurity. So if that's true,
That's the Cowbell.
you probably want to take advantage of that, because you're going to get data security experts telling you a value about your data security. That's becoming a pattern of this coverage. Again, like B&O and employment practices bundle the services with the coverage.
Okay, so I will clarify that question, but we'll move forward with binding the coverage then.
Do we have to vote?
No,
just
we
give me
don't, no, we don't need a vote on it. We just wanted to have
We
that
just want to know where to
discussion.
go.
Yeah, and because we've discussed it before, but unfortunately, I don't want a lapse in coverage, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want that either.
Good.
All right, we have a consent agenda. That, she said that was it,
Oh, okay, okay.
and then she coughed and ran away. Mary moved.
Yep.
Can I get a second for the
I got
consent?
second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion there? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? I know Jim has a hard out in about 1 minute, so that leaves 5 of us, so we have to press ahead.
Okay,
New business. We have summer days for the guidance department.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Jim. Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Teacher aid summer hours. Thank you, Julio.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion here? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have some reserve funds that are gonna exceed the 4% limit,
Been a pleasure, Janine.
Potentially.
potentially.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion for that?
I still move.
Can you wait 1 second?
Yep. But I'm gonna take that motion slowly. Thank you, Janine.
What happens if it goes up?
I mean, if it goes over 4%, you know, the board then at that point provides guidance. Do we want to move it to these reserves? Do we want to keep a higher percent for higher percentage than the 4? You know, in the past, when we were going into some tough years, the board agreed, let's keep it a little bit higher, so we have that additional cash flow if needed. So if it's above 4%, then I would come back to you and talk about different options. Yeah.
Thank you, Julio. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have the code of conduct up, and Dr. Geelan has a couple of changes that she's noted that we all discussed. Can I get a motion for that?
Make it clear in the motion that we're adopting the code of conduct as modified earlier.
It's meant during the public hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dr. Geelan has the notes for the code of conduct.
And when do we see these changes?
Yeah, July 1st.
Changes have to be before July 1st.
Yes. Then we're going to print, right?
Yep.
I mean, if we need to change it, we'll change it.
Sorry.
There's no prohibition against changing it.
After. All right, so I will move
Thank you, Mary.
with those changes that we talked about at the meeting earlier.
All right. Thank you, Janine. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an MOA with the school nurses for the summer school nurse stipend. Can I get a motion for that? Thank you, Janine.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion there?
Do we have nurses?
Yes.
I think we're still working on it. And this might help, I think is what we're trying to do. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an MOA with the teacher aides for a summer school stipend.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we have the most fun reading on our agenda, the GASB 75 report.
Seen it a couple times.
Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second, sorry.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion on that? Actuarial reports are always fun to read. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a tax settlement with Olean Lodging Associates. Can I get a motion there?
So,
Yeah.
Thank you, Janine.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? This wasn't a bad one.
No, not awful.
and there's no back. Which is good.
Yeah, yes, that was good.
No
Yeah.
reimbursement.
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I need signatures on that one.
Okay.
Contract for summer transportation.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? That is a huge increase.
Part of it is because we're doing more transportation this summer, and Portville is the only one that's providing it. We aren't splitting it between Fairmount and Portville. So, but part of that is just simply
Diesel.
diesel, and gas.
All right, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a contract with Connecting Communities in Action.
yes, so moved.
Thank you, Mary.
And
Julio, thank you. Any discussion?
There are two data security components to this contract, and the last one, we did it to, does not look like it's still. Signed. And then just, I mean, what I think is a really good idea, but I don't know if we have, is in the contract itself. It says that the community liaison will be provided with data security training module, you know, that the district has. And I don't think we have such a module, although I think providing one to people that are outside contractors would be a really good idea. And a pretty simple thing to do, and there's a lot of online policy. I just know the contract does say that you do that every year. And I'm not aware.
That ever being established?
Yeah, and just, again, aspirational. So, some put in the contract to do it.
I'm also not here to say that it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, maybe it does. Yeah, I just think that that should be filled out. or something. Yeah. Exhibit B.
Oh, yeah.
This one is, to me is, it's, exhibit B kind of, what it does is it informs the school about what the actual practice. Right.
Oh, yeah. And Exhibit C.
Blank.
is blank as
Yes.
well.
I won't sign it until it's filled out.
So the question is, should we move on this now? Pending. Can we approve it without that being filled out? Pending you signing it once it's filled out,
You can do it either way, or
or we can just wait till next week.
Mhm.
All right, I think,
you
well,
can do that.
Mary made the motion, and Julio seconded.
Oh, no.
One fully, one.
yeah, let's pull it until it's filled out completely the way it's supposed to be.
Okay,
So we'll postpone until the July 5th meeting.
yes.
So if there was anything that the homeschool liaison was going to do, to not do it until after the 5th. So seesaw programming until we do that, right?
Basically, a holiday weekend.
It's a holiday weekend. anyways.
We're back on Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right,
Only for, this isn't only for the summer though.
It's for the whole year. but
Yeah,
yeah.
it starts July.
Starts July 1st and goes through.
Friday. Yeah, nobody's.
Right.
so yeah, I'm not sure if it's necessary to seesaw all programming. However, that needs to be handled.
We'll handle it, that's
All right.
fine.
School volunteers.
Mhm.
Can I get a motion to approve those volunteers?
Yep, So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion on this? Thank you for your interest in helping out the students. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're jumping to O. Cooperative electricity bid. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion here? All those in, yep,
This is just that we're asking to be part of this purchasing agent, right?
yes.
Yeah.
It's not saying that we've actually done, they've done anything yet, but just that we're.
We want to be part of it.
Right.
It helps.
Definitely, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, now we're gonna look at policies. We're gonna try to adopt a bunch of them all at once. Let's see if we've got these.
Yeah.
Get back in the notes here. Perchance, did we want to throw in the smoking, tobacco, and cannabis, those three?
Yeah, I think so.
We didn't have any substantive changes to those.
5640.
So add into this list 5640, 6150, 7220.
And, honestly, I think 3420, which is the general planning discrimination. And it wasn't really.
Oh, yeah.
This is
Yeah.
general matter.
Actually, I was thinking 3420 was the one that says 6121. 6121 is the one that's got some mistakes, but we're gonna fix those mistakes. Is that right? Okay,
Yes. It's 120.
so which one is, so the one we're not is the use of surveillance cameras, because we're gonna get a little bit more
So, yeah.
information on those.
So the ones that I don't have in there are use of surveillance cameras. We want to put in the non-discrimination 3420, we want to put in there as well.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, I was-
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And then, so I don't have in there 5560, which is audit committees, or 6121.
But I think
5560 is in there.
5560 should be in there.
It is in
Audit.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, it isn't. Yep, you're right,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah, because we're okay with
So the
that one
only
too.
one was.
The only one is just the camera and just the audio portion. of
All right,
that, whatever that
but
is.
just to be clear, this was a second reading for the audit committee one.
Yes, it
And
was.
the motion says to waive the second reading, so should we do the audit committee one on a separate one?
Maybe.
Just so it's,
Well, and then sexual harassment in the workplace.
Was a
also
third
was a
one.
third one.
was a third one, but I don't have that one.
You could just say to adopt the following policies,
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
and then waiving the second reading is implied.
Okay, all right, I like it.
So,
Um,
so moved on all of that,
Okay, so
all of those ones.
one more time, 5684 is out. That's the surveillance
That's
one.
That's the only, yeah, that's the only.
Every other one
But
we
every
adopt.
other
The rest,
one,
the rest of
I'm
them. we're in.
leaving second, thirds,
Adopt
14s.
Yes.
Yeah, we're ready to roll.
All right, Vicky, any questions?
The second, I have Mary as the motion, seconded by,
Janine.
thank you.
All those, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Hi.
I wasn't. Okay, opposed, abstentions? All right, we have a couple of policies to delete
Yeah, that's nice.
due to their redundancy, and
Yeah, so moved on that.
thank you, Mary. Thank you, Kelly. Don't get to do that very often. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we have to rescind a retirement resignation for Rick Eustace. Thank you, Janine. Can I get a second?
So second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a retirement resignation for Dorothy Kelly. With deep regret.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide retirement resignation for Patricia Schumacher with deep regret.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher retirement resignation for Nanette Higgins
So moved.
with deep regret. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher resignation of Carrie Peters. Thank you, Janine. Kelly, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher resignation of Caitlin Martin.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide resignation for Haley Dunmeyer. Thank you, Janine. Thanks, Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have a keyboard specialist resignation for Melissa Green.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a cleaner resignation for Keys Hund.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a cleaner resignation of Jackie Falk.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We are appointing a records and receiving clerk. Receiving and inventory clerk, but records receiving and inventory clerk.
Yes.
Keys. Oh, wait, hold on. Yep, Keys Hunt.
Yeah. So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have an appointment for a keyboard specialist of Jackie Falk.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have some summer school appointments.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. This is for the aides. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have a summer school teacher appointment.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine.
Second.
Thanks, Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, now on to informational items. We have a meeting on Tuesday, the 5th, as well as a reorg meeting and a meeting on the 19th.
It's at 6:30 and then that board meeting afterwards.
To immediately follow, yep. Okay. All right, Dr. Geelan. Yes, sir. We have a need for executive session.
Yes, sir, we do.
We have personnel issues
Personnel and litigation.
and, okay, personnel and litigation. Can I get a motion to go into executive session? Thank you, Julio.
Should we invite? Is there a need to invite?
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know. Do you?
Yes, might as well. Seeing as he's sitting here behind me and he's still here, let's ask
Still
Mr. Wolf to come in here.
Upright.
He's still awake, sir? Okay, great. He's got the thumbs up.
All right, I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? It is 9:35.
35.
All right, thank you, everybody. We do not anticipate any action after executive session.
Dr. Geelan, before I leave, I just wanted to make one last comment. I don't think you understand why Project Lead the Way is before school. It's before school because the students that take it have full up schedules. My daughter would have to drop some other class to get it, and you're talking college credit, which potential scholarships.
I have been in charge of Project Lead the Way. I've been in 3 different districts that have Project Lead the Way. And this is the only place where it's been outside of the school day. All I said is since we've redone our whole schedule for next year, and we're doing our master schedule from scratch, is let's take a look at that first, because we'd be crazy not to look at it.
She has no room in her schedule. As it is, she's pushing health off to her senior